You're listening to The Resistance, powered by the voice of the infiltration.
The people do not want to hear the same thing that they always hear from the stream. We do want to separate ourselves. We want to show that we can debate in the finest of American traditions, where we understand that the purpose of this is to be productive and to learn and give each other that dignity. So, and I think we have the right group to do that, and everybody. We appreciate everyone being here and taking part in this. Everyone recognizes that in 2016 we are sitting maybe in a unique place in time, and we're not willing to sit by and watch things go by. We actually actively to be part of something that is different. So, you know, that's what we want to represent, and we want everyone to have an opportunity to represent that uniquely for themselves. And so with that in mind, if you guys are ready, man, we'll get started with the questions and get going with this. Is that fine with everyone? All right. And can you go ahead and tell us who you are, and if you're with a group, what that group is, and what it means to you to be here on this panel?
Okay, my name is Tammy Lynn. I'm not really affiliated with any specific group. I've been co-host to many shows that I'm more active in my community. I'm all about change. I think we're all here for the same reason, and I want to do anything I can to contribute to that.
Excellent. We really appreciate you being here and being a part of this. You know, I want to go ahead and throw out my first question to you. And we have a number here. We all discussed before on the panel some of these questions before, and then some of them are different. But I want to ask you, when I say to you, Black Lives Matter, what are your thoughts?
I knew you were going to hit me with that one. I have so many.
I'm gonna hit a few people.
No, I have so many different thoughts on that, because while I believe that the Black Lives Matter, you know, I totally agree with the wanting the equal justice and what have you. On the same level, I think that it causes division, because people who aren't involved and don't really know what's going on, people who are blind, they automatically take it as racism. So then they want to be like, white lives matter, and, you know, this lives matter. So I just being involved with everything that we are all involved in. And demographically, it's just like John and I were speaking earlier about this. Demographically, like, all police are not, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, you know, I hate police, although I do. You know, I can govern myself, and, you know, I know how to do that. But at the same time, I'd be a hypocrite if my house was being robbed and I couldn't, you know, as a single mother with children, I couldn't fend for myself. You know, either myself or my children are going to call 911. It's just out of habit. I'm not going to sit here and lie. Good point.
Yeah.
So I do believe that it can cause more division, and I'm constantly being asked that on every show I've ever been on, you know, ever since it started. But John, you know, he had a good point between the Black Lives Matter and the Black Lives Movement.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's you know, there's pros and cons to that, but I do believe that the minute that it became well known, everybody was like, white lives matter, all lives matter. Well, naturally, all lives matter, but they have a specific point, and like in our demographic area, it's not really more so, you know, white cops versus black criminals. It's, you know what I mean? It's white on white, black on black. It's, you know, it doesn't matter. But that's just my area. I can only speak for my area. I can't speak for everybody else's.
Yeah, no, I like that. Justin, Mr. King, tell us who you are and what group you're with and what the panel means to you, and then we'll get to the question here.
I'm Justin King. I'm the editor of the Fifth Column, which is the Fifth Column, Pontiac Tribune, and Sleeper Cells. I'm a professional agitator, I guess. I like the idea of the panel simply because it represents so many different groups. I'm of the belief that it's all one movement, and we're just fractured at the moment. And this I see as a step in bringing everybody together.
Yeah, hey, that's great.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Now, when I say Black Lives Matter, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think, of course, they do. When I saw I wish I could take credit for this, but I saw it on Facebook, and basically, to address the All Lives Matter theory, it said, imagine 6 people sitting down to dinner. Bob doesn't have food, and Bob says Bob deserves food. Everybody else has food, and they say, well, everybody deserves food. Both of these statements are true, but it doesn't rectify the fact that Bob doesn't have food. And I think that's where the issue comes in is, yes, all lives do matter. Black lives matter as well. They're included in all, but at this moment, they're the group that is getting the least amount of representation.
Thank you.
Excellent.
In reference to BLM, it was brilliant strategy by your right-wing conservatives to twist that. Every black person knows that all lives matter. They know that. That's a given.
Yep.
And for the white radical to say, hey, all lives matter, they purposefully were getting that message out to disparage the black movement. It's a given. Do white people have to be told Black Lives Matter also? For that one word, you had a far right wing being able to disparage that. And I would hope enough white people would be able to see that of course all lives matter. But the fact that they have to announce Black Lives Matter means that most of America, or a lot of America, does not realize that black lives are not mattering. Black people realize that. 19 years of my career, 24-year career, were spent in the ghetto. The 20 years, 4 years were spent in a white, affluent neighborhood. And from that experience, I can tell you right now that the deaths of white people, the murders of white people, the robberies of white people, the burglaries of white people's houses was given much more attention than the black. So anyway, the Black Lives Matter issue, to me, as soon as it came out, I realized they were not saying only Black Lives Matter. They were not saying that. They were saying Black Lives Matter, and if you did not know that they also would include the word also, that was a given. But the right wing has taken that, and they have twisted it. And unfortunately, too many white people joined and jumped on that bandwagon. To me, every reasonable person knows that when black people say Black Lives Matter, that they are not saying only Black Lives Matter. What they're saying is we have been disparaged so much in history that we want you to know that, hey, we matter too. And but the super rich saw this as a way to divide the blacks and whites again by saying, hey, what do you mean just Black Lives Matter? All lives matter. And a lot of people jumped on that. Now, a lot of white people resent the blacks for using that term. Once again, the super rich put a wedge between whites and blacks. That's my take on BLM.
Yep, and I think a lot of people saw that for what it was, and it was something to see the lack of media response once again with the same commonsensical view that the rest of us could plainly see. And, so these all being hot button, it's going to be, I think, surprising to a lot of people that we would touch on the subjects that we will be. So when I say Black Lives Matter, what are your thoughts?
All right. My name is Kevin Crosby. I am the leader of the Panther Party. I've been doing this as organized anyway for about 3 years, unorganized for about 10, and definitely I'm looking forward to building with the resistance.
When I say Black Lives Matter, what are your thoughts?
Do they? That's nice to know. I recently saw something. I was watching a Bill Maher episode where he was speaking with the rapper Mos Def, And when they were talking, there was something that kind of caught my attention, and it was when Bill Maher was comparing ISIS and what they do, with them wanting to kill Americans, and Mos Def made a comment about, he said, there's a lot of people who want to kill Americans. Some of them are called police. And it kind of caught me, because I think it's an indictment on this country that we have to even have a movement created for whatever purpose that states that Black Lives Matter. I firmly believe life matters. Shouldn't matter what color you're in. But it's the fact that we have to actually have a movement that says that, it's an indictment on this country and everything that it claims to stand for. So I do have some issues about that name. The movement, I think it's a good thing. I think that they're also being infiltrated at a high rate. So I'm not sure how long their message is going to be heard in the form that it is. Something's going on when the presidential candidates start trying to use it to their advantage or disadvantage. So, as far as the Black Lives Matter, I'd like to get us to where life matters. It shouldn't matter what color it is, and we shouldn't have to have a movement for it. I think people would be offended if all of a sudden there were several movements. White Lives Matter, Hispanic Lives Matter, Asian Lives Matter, Handicapped Lives Matter. All life matters. It really does.
John Anthony Fairhurst, I want to move on to you, buddy. Tell us who you are, tell us what group you're affiliated with, and what it means to you to be on this panel, please.
It means a lot for me to be here, especially with the individuals involved. Involved with the Million Mask March, Million Mask Movement, founded it in 2013. Since then, this group and this panel is the beginning steps. Is one of the things I've been trying to do for a very long time, is to bring all activist groups together. Like I said, none of us have enough to do it on our own, and that's one of the reasons why the divide and conquer tactics work so well, is because they keep us fighting amongst ourselves. And to be involved with a panel like this, to bring all these groups together and all concerned citizens together, is in my mind, it's like a game changer. It's a monumental event.
Absolutely. And is it true that Facebook put you on probation for sharing out the group so much?
Yeah, pretty much. From the Million Mask March at first, they tried. They said they censor any basically politically loaded pages, like activist pages. They've been shutting them down. One of the Panther, I was actually speaking with Kevin in the past, and one of the Panther Party's pages, they got taken down until they were threatened with a lawsuit. They weren't doing anything wrong or illegal on the page. It's the same thing, just this resistance group that's put together, just sharing it around on social media, and basically I got blocked from sharing it on social media through private groups and stuff. But
yeah, the name of the movie is Social Networking. You were trying to socially network and use it for its expressed purpose, and they restricted you for doing so.
Oh yeah.
Well, let's go on to this, because I have a feeling you're the guy to ask. What are some of the things that people that are new to protest and activism should be aware of? And this question's from Trey Yarnell.
As far as activism, protesting in the streets, just from different areas, first and foremost, you need to be equipped and prepared for anything that you are, for whatever level you're willing personally to take it to, as well as you need to be aware of your surroundings and what's going on, what the protest is about. You need to be educated on certain things. Because if you're out there protesting, you're trying to raise awareness. So if you don't know what, if you're not knowledgeable on whatever cause or whatever event it is, if somebody comes up to you and asks you, at some of the events we have printed informative handouts that we because if it's a march and you're actually marching down the street, you don't have enough time to stop and talk to these people. So it's better to have some type of pamphlet or something to hand it to them, Because, I mean, if you just talk to them real quick, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to remember what you said 20 minutes later, or they're not going to remember a website or to Google this or look up that or whatever. So it's always good to have some type of, handout to give to them. I mean, and if you want to get down to, like, basics, I mean, comfortable clothes, comfortable shoes, water, gas mask, gloves, weather-related gear, whether it's going to be cold or hot. Cameras are always good. Be careful. I mean, at certain events, there's always police agitators. There's agitators, there's provocateurs, people that authorities will plant into the protest to, if they want them to make the action look bad, they'll go out there and, property destruction, break windows, do whatever, just to make to demonize the entire movement. But, I mean, you always got to be aware of that.
Man, those are good answers. You have a lot of tools in your activist arsenal there.
Yeah, I mean, I would also suggest to always be with, like, a team or at least one other person with you. Never leave a protest or by yourself. Because, I mean, I've read stories where friends have left by themselves. The cops will wait till they get away from the rest of the group and then arrest them. So, I mean, definitely always be with someone. Don't carry your ID with you. You're not required to have an ID or show an ID to a police officer at any time if you're not being under the suspicion of committing a crime.
Yeah. Well, and I think at the heart of what you're mostly saying there is there's the physical preparation that says bring water, bring cameras, dress appropriately, but really educate yourself. Make sure that you know what you're involved in. Make sure you know the laws. Make sure you know your rights. And really educate yourself.
Definitely.
Excellent, man. I appreciate that answer, and I think a lot of other people are going to appreciate it too. I think that's good stuff. Like I said, there's a lot of tools in your activist arsenal there, John. We appreciate that.
Right.
Hey, Sam, you still here with us, buddy?
Oh, yeah, I'm enjoying the conversation.
Excellent. Tell us who you are and if you're affiliated with any groups and what this panel means to you here.
Well, my name's Sam Andrews. I'm a father and a grandfather, and I was the oldest child of 12 kids. I had 8 sisters and 3 brothers. I like to say my mama drowned all the dumb kids. I'm actually a weapons engineer. I'm a trained sniper. My company develops weapon systems that kill things at 3,000 meters. I've developed technology that guards the President of the United States and that our special forces have used. And
so is that for long-distance buffalo hunting?
Yeah, I don't know that my stuff's ever killed a buffalo. I hear they taste good, but I've never done that, so I can't speak to that. I'm just a guy that I'm sick and tired of watching our children being killed by policemen. I've spent decades training policemen, and it's like they've lost their way. They've lost their problem-solving skills, and their tactics now are just use force and kill.
That's something I wanted to talk to you about, and I know you're the guy to ask this. I want to talk to you about, and this is a 3-part question here. I want to talk to you about police procedures, threat assessment, and how all of that relates to the Tamir Rice murder. Could you get into some of that for me?
Well, sure. I mean, it's a fairly simple thing. When we train police officers, I've mainly trained SWAT officers, but I've done plenty of patrol rifle classes for sheriffs and other police agencies. You always cover your use of force policy. And so you have a use of force continuum, and then you have tactics, techniques, and procedures that you apply to different types of situations. So as contrast, if you have an active shooter situation in a school, most departments accept the policy that the first officer on scene is going to go hunting. They're not going to wait for the other officers to show up. If there's someone actively killing children, they're going to go in and deal with the threat, even if it's by themselves. Okay? Now, that's, in contrast, totally different than the Tamir Rice situation, which was a report of a person with a gun. That is not the same as an active shooter situation. And in a man with a gun or a person with a gun call, an officer is supposed to use three fundamental things: time, distance, and cover, to observe the person with the weapon and do a proper threat assessment. And in the Tamir Rice shooting, it was very clear the officers drove right up to Tamir Rice. They violated the rule of distance. They jumped out of the car immediately. They violated the rule of time. And the officer exposed his chest to Tamir, which means he had no cover to protect himself. So if Tamir didn't comply instantly, then he's now, in his own mind, justified to use force. So he violated the time, distance, and cover rules and placed himself in a position where if Tamir didn't comply immediately, that he would have to execute him, and that's exactly what happened.
Unreal. So this is coming from somebody who absolutely knows, understands, and trains and teaches on police procedure, how to assess threat, and you're saying that it was done incorrectly.
It was so incorrect, he didn't get anything right. The interesting thing is the guy driving the car was the more experienced man. So as a higher-ranking officer, I'd have to ask, doing an evaluation of the situation, what the F were you doing driving up right next to that kid? What were you thinking? I mean, it's completely wrong.
Yeah, from beginning to end there. Now, how much in police procedure and threat assessment have you seen within the nation that has been incorrect and correct in the different stories that we've seen?
Well, what you're going to find, I think if you looked at the data, you'll see the same pattern that I'm seeing. You're seeing the large city departments that have suffered economically have not been putting money into those departments for training their men. And there's a severe lack of training, failure to train problem in the bigger city departments. In some of the smaller counties, like say in Wyoming or Montana, where the economy isn't terrible, you don't see these kinds of problems because the officers treat people differently and they have a different level of training, and they're not interested in driving up and shooting someone.
So now, we've all kind of seen where, and we've heard the arguments of this is a systemic problem. And the question comes up, is police violence pure racism, or is it something else? I think you're hearkening to there is a lack of procedure, a lack of being able to properly threat assess, but how much of it is racist?
Well, here's the thing. I've been training officers for 30 years. I would be lying to you if I told you that I never had a racist officer on a SWAT team or that I'd never trained a racist police sniper. That would be a lie. But I can tell you this. I've been doing it a long time. I've trained hundreds of men, if not thousands. And I would say less than probably 2% are racist. Some of the white officers are racist towards black people or Asian people or Hispanic people. Some of the black officers I've trained are racist towards white people. Okay, so it's not unique to just white people. But I can tell you this, if we look at this problem through the prism of race, we will never solve it because it's much different than that. There's more to it than that. And I'm not saying there's no racism in America. Don't get me wrong there. There is racism still in America. And I think Ray will speak to that as far as the policies and procedures. But here in Missouri, we have poor trailer park communities full of white people. They don't get the same attention the rich neighborhoods in Chesterfield and Wildwood do in St. Louis County when there's a crime or a robbery. And here's my point. I've had sergeants tell me, oh, if I work in the 2nd Precinct up in North County in St. Louis, and I pull a 16-year-old black kid over, I could do whatever I want with him. I can punk him something fierce. He doesn't know his rights. He can't afford an attorney. I can jack him up till the cows come home. But if I pull over a black kid in Chesterfield or Wildwood, his daddy's probably a doctor or a lawyer. And if he's not a lawyer, he's probably a rich businessman that can afford 10 lawyers. You got to be careful with that kid.
Right.
Now, if that's coming from our police officers, is it really the skin color, or are we talking about a protected class an unprotected class? Are we talking about a vulnerable, weak individual that's perceived as weak and defenseless, and then talking about someone who has a dad that can afford an army of lawyers? It's really not all about race. It really is more about a protected class versus an unprotected class.
All right, I like that because when I come back to you, I want to get more into racism shrouded, class warfare shrouded as racism. And, and I think that's something we've all kind of alluded to. But first, do we have Mr. Ray Lewis with us still?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, I apologize. My phone went out the first time there, and you had to repeat yourself. And if you had introduced yourself before, I'm going to ask yourself to repeat yourself again. I apologize. Tell us who you are, and if you're affiliated with any groups, and what it means to be on this panel, please.
Yeah, Ray Lewis, retired Philadelphia police captain, and I got started with the Occupy movement 4 years ago. And it means a lot to me to be on this panel because I sense a lot of civility among all of us, even though there may be differences of opinion. And according to the racist comment, there's two types of racists I found on the police department. Those that came on as racist and those that developed racism while on the job. And those that developed racism on the job were inevitably those who were working in the ghetto. There are two types of cops, ghetto cops and cops. The cops are those that work in white areas of cities. Philadelphia had several nice white affluent areas where cops work. And also, you have your rural police, your suburban police, and your state police. They are police compared to ghetto police. And what I mean by that is cops that work in the ghetto experience a totally different environment. And that environment is one of constant hostility directed towards them. It's dealing with a lot more crime, and it's dealing with people who are disenfranchised, and they see the police as the protectors of those that are keeping them down. So you are going to experience more hostility from that group of people. So racist cops are made by working in the ghetto.
That was a lot to unpack. The very first thing you said, Ray, was that there are the ones that come into the force racist and then the ones that develop it after working in the bad neighborhoods. And that's really interesting. That is a dialogue that isn't commonly spoken about. I've not heard that spoken about on any mainstream for sure, and I believe that would be unpopular speech for someone that is still a police officer. Am I correct in that assumption?
100% correct.
Wow, man, right. All right, I can't wait to get back to you. Heather Lucas, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had heard you come through there for a second, and but tell us who you are and if you're affiliated with any group and what it means to you to be on this panel, please.
Okay. I'm Heather Lucas. I'm a mother of 2 kids. I work full-time as well as am an activist full-time. I work with a variety of groups here in Ohio on community efforts such as feeding the homeless, helping families in need, things like that. I am also the other half of Awaken Media. We cover protests and activism through articles, videos, pictures. Basically, I'm here to continue trying to push the benefit that I see in groups working together. I've seen the success that unity can bring. I mean, it's been on a smaller level, but I look forward to seeing that on a larger level. I have found just doing what I do here in Ohio that when something important needs done, differences and egos can be put aside just to get the work done. So there's proof that this dream we all have really can work and it has capability to grow. So I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Man, well, we really appreciate your efforts and appreciate you being here. We've already kind of covered a myriad of subjects, and I want to know, before we move on to any other questions, is there anything we've covered thus far that you wanted to touch on?
Oh, Lord. I guess I could touch on the protesting a little bit. There are different types of protests and rallies and things like that. I think that if you plan on doing a protest or a rally, that you should have other efforts put behind that. I mean, there's one thing to stand on a street corner with your sign and, with your message to get out to the public, but if whatever you're protesting against, you're also not working to rectify in some way behind the scenes, I just think there's a lot more things we can be doing besides standing on street corners. I know we have a lot of weekend protesters who like to get out there with their group of friends and spend the afternoon together, and that's fun. But to me, if you're really, if this is something really important to you, then you need to be putting in more work than that. And I think that a lot of us, most of us, have chosen to do this full time, and it is a lifestyle change. So I just think there's more to protesting than standing on the street corner.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as soon as they go out there and do it, they'll figure it out, won't they?
Yes. And it's nice to actually see something come of your actions, too. I mean, a lot of people go out just so they can have their photo taken and put on Facebook, but when you can actually see changes that you're making in your community, I think that's important. And, it's the responsible thing to me is to show up at, the different council meetings, understand what the numbers are, do as much research as possible. That way you know exactly what you're talking about. I know John had spoken on that, but it is important to, see what you're up against. Then, rather than telling the, community or the public there's a problem, you can give them the facts that they can look into. And so I think it is important to do as much research as possible, but make yourself a part of whatever it is that, you're trying to get accomplished.
Absolutely. You're asking for engagement. You're asking for people to involve themselves. So I'm going to open this next line of questioning to you. And I have a little bit to read here, but we have two activists that had submitted questions to the panel here. And they expressed two different kinds of views here. And I want to see where you stand on it and why. But first, let me read this. From Roger Nichols, he asks, how do we get the money out of Congress? How do we end legal corruption if our people don't vote? Jared Turner says, when I vote for someone to speak for me, public politicians, I announce to the world I am not capable of managing my own affairs and would like someone else to do it for me. There is no fixing the dismissal of personal responsibility. When you vote for someone else to be your voice in any matters, you have removed your value from the conversation. People that vote and are upset about government have no room to speak. They voted for rulers and should smile at the rules that their voice helped create. So let me throw it to you, Heather. Do you vote? Why or why not?
I actually have not voted in 2 years. I was always a voter. I really thought that was something, not the only thing you can be doing, of course, but, that's, as an American, that's your responsibility. Now, I'm a little different than other voters to where I do more daily than just wait around for my time to cast a vote, and I think that a lot of people feel like as long as they fulfill that part of their responsibility, they're doing all they can do. So I'm a little different that way, but I don't vote anymore. I don't feel like it makes the changes that we need to see take place. For instance, no matter who you vote for, so much of your tax dollars are wasted. So let's say I know that almost $400,000 were spent on Swedish massages for rabbits. Okay? It doesn't matter what politician is in office, you're going to have wasteful spending like that you have no say-so over. So I think that
to me, no matter who you vote for, the system still does what it does. And so we just have to find another way to get these things done. And I think one of the things that you should be able to do is to explain this to a normal person, like, where does your tax dollars go exactly? And of course, they think it goes to education and building the roads, and, they can go down a laundry list of good things that, they can say, okay, I'm happy with that. But then show them how much of your money is actually wasted that nobody is taking any responsibility for. And, it's enough money that it should really piss you off, because you see that your community has homeless people in it. You see that veterans are committing suicide on, insane numbers. There's so many other things that need to be, addressed that our elected officials are not, and it's being overlooked. And so I don't really know, exactly the full benefit of what your vote is. You vote on a person. You don't vote on what the system is allowing.
Well, yeah, and I like how you hearkened to, voting expresses your right, your duty is to be politically engaged. This is how our founding fathers said we could keep our republic, was to, have a population that was engaged in the political process. And, the engagement of an activist is year-round. We don't just wait, as like you said, for the votes. So, man, I think that's really powerful, and I appreciate that. All right, Mike, tell us who you are, if you're affiliated with any groups, and what this panel means to you, and then we'll move on to the question here.
All right, I'm Mike Kay, co-founder of Awakened Media. We've traveled all over the Midwest, attending small movements, small marches, protests, rallies, whatever, all the way up to large ones. I don't affiliate with a single group. I'm affiliated with a lot of groups. By keeping my individuality, I believe I can approach other people in a different realm than they're used to. I don't approach with ideologies and arguments. I approach with, what are you guys doing?
Excellent. And to be part of the panel here, what does this mean to you?
Believe it or not, I think this is the biggest thing to hit, activism since the 60s. It has a great potential for the simple fact of the diversity, not only in backgrounds, but groups and ideologies that we harness inside of this 8-person panel. And the way that we can speak to people with, intelligence behind it, every detail, even when we're shooting from the hip in responses, people can identify with at least one of us. So I think what we're doing here as the resistance, as the panel, is not only the radio show to speak to people, but the actions that can be taken with our words and with our knowledge. It's crucial. Just absolutely crucial.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And let me throw this question at you. Do you vote? And if so, why? And if not, why?
I don't vote. I do believe in voting, but I don't believe it's worth a shit anymore in this country, at least on a federal level. We've had that proven to us time and time again, from presidential elections to, you name it. Good Lord. States, recount Snow White, Cinderella's, dead people, they've all shown up. We've even got, companies that are being paid to count these votes. And everybody's trusting that once you pencil that in, you drop it, that vote counted. It's been proven, I guess recently here, what was that, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. I guess Bernie won the state, and then the next morning Hillary got it. It's just an interesting game to play. But on a local level, I think it is extremely important on many levels. Sam and I have had some conversations, and I believe that we actually had them as a panel on other calls, and he really made good points when it came to at least the sheriff's end of things, trying to find the constitutional sheriff and rallying behind him and giving him some support and voting for him and getting that person, him or her, into office. Because realistically speaking, the national level or the federal government is so vast, it's so large, you're not going to do anything to it. There's a lot of different ways that we can go about getting to it, but voting is not going to change anything because the system has been tainted. But on a local level, when you can show up to a state house with a couple thousand people, or you can go to the voting box with a couple thousand people, those people can pay attention on more of a focus group than they can on a vast majority of 50 states and how many electoral votes and all these different things.
Agreed, and I like the two-part answer, both on the national, federal, and then on the state. A lot of people don't go into that type of depth, so I appreciate that. Tammy, I think we're going to take it back to you, and my question for you is, and this actually comes from Mike Tiny Smalls Carpenter. He asks, is it possible to... No, I apologize. I'm going to a different one. He says, does anyone think that the United States can accomplish what Iceland did? And do you believe that the United States, the people, can get their country back? And are you familiar with what Iceland did, jailing the bankers?
Yes, I am.
Okay, yeah, good, excellent. So, yeah, do you think that the United States is capable of doing what Iceland did? And do you believe our people are capable of doing this?
Oh, this is a tough question. I mean, I'm all for what Iceland did. They let the system crash and build it back up, and I love the way that they're building the Constitution by crowdsourcing and letting their people have a say in that. And I really do think that the United States needs that. Do I think that we are capable of it? I think that any country is capable of it. But do I think the people are ready for that? No, I don't. It's back to our last conversation with anarchy. You know, there's different practices to take. People aren't as fully aware of what's going on, and I do believe that if our banking system starts to collapse, if you mess with somebody's money, they're gonna become real conscious real quick. You know, you go into their finances. That's a quick way to wake them up. I do think it's a little. I'm all for that. Iceland, Ireland, everything that they've done, and I do. Like I said, I do believe that every country can do that. You know, but I'm not sure that we're ready for that. I mean, they had thousands daily protesting on the street. I couldn't see us right now at the point that we are at. We can't even get them once a month. We couldn't get those numbers once a month, let alone every day. I mean, they were protesting daily, day after day after day. I just don't think that we could get those numbers. I mean, I wish that we could. I mean, our Constitution has to be reconstructed because I think that the old one is just tainted and, we're not abiding by it. And just going back to the votes. And like was just saying, like on a local level with sheriff, I'm all for that. But when it comes to the federal level, there's no way.
Well, I tell you what, I think, first of all, that's a very wise and educated answer. And it's funny how when one of us expresses our own feeling on it, I know the people on the panel here for the most part, and I can tell you that the people that I know on the panel absolutely agree with you. We all do. It's amazing, and it's nice to hear people reaffirming, for themselves what it is you believe personally. That on the federal level, man, they are running their own game, and everyone is well aware. So I appreciate that. Justin, what are your thoughts? Because you weren't here for the other panel. What are your thoughts on anarchism? Do you think people can self-govern? And do you think it's possible with the American people?
Well, I try not to talk too much about my personal political views because of the news outlets, but in this venue, I'll go ahead and say it. Yeah, I am an anarchist. I don't think you force an economic system to go along with it because it kind of defeats the purpose. I do believe that it's possible in the United States. I don't think that it's going to happen anytime soon. I think that it's going to require a lot of education and a lot of restructuring of society. Anarchism requires a lot of self-discipline, a lot of self-responsibility, and it's something that Americans as a whole have a problem with. We like to see ourselves as individualists. We like to see, in reality, we're not, most of us. And I think that until people are ready to truly govern themselves and accept responsibility, I don't see it happening. But I think that it's possible to educate people and to get people to the point where we can have it.
Do you also see the theme here on the panel that we see that we are surrounded by good ideas, but when it comes to the capability or maybe even the maturity of our people, that's where we don't have the faith?
Well, the control systems that are in place in this country are the most advanced the world has ever seen. I mean, we have, the average American is chasing consumer products that they don't need and most of the time don't really want. And with the, to go back to the question about Iceland, I don't think that we can have a bloodless revolution in the United States. We can't even have a bloodless, Super Bowl celebration. We're a violent nation. And I think that when that happens, I don't think it's going to be peaceful. I think it's going to be horrible. I think it's a regrettable fact. But
yeah, and I think most people would agree with you. Why? Why do you strive to put out information? Why do you go to the events and document these things? Why do you work so hard as an activist, as an independent journalist, when you believe that the control systems are unique to our time?
Well, because I'm stupid. I'm hard-headed. No, we can't surrender. We have to continue to fight. And I tend to believe what Thomas Jefferson said. I study politics and war so that my son can study art and philosophy. I do it for my kids. I mean, somebody has to do it. If not me, who?
Man, I think that is one of the best answers that we'll get this evening. And it mostly is because all of us can identify with that, not just the people on this panel, but everybody listening as well. All right, I try to give everybody a minute because I know I have everybody muting their phones, so I appreciate it. Have we gone over any of the questions that you would like to touch on before we move on? We've covered anarchism, we've covered all kinds of stuff.
Well, I have to look at a piece of history that shows that people can self-govern, and that's the American Revolution. To the Queen of England, the patriots here were terrorists. And look at what happened. This country has formed and basically self-governed from that time. They've made some mistakes. They learned along the way. They're still making some mistakes. That's why there's people like us. But I believe everyone should have the right to self-determination. I don't think anyone should be held to a colonial system, an imperial system, a social system. None of that. All of these things, little bits and pieces of all of them work. But people should be able to pick and choose the best life for themselves, not have it chosen for them and then force-fed to them, and then indoctrinating their children to continue that same practice. I believe that everyone should be on self-determination. So if that's what makes me an anarchist, then hello, my fellow anarchist.
And I'll get back to you here. I wanna move on, and I want to move on to Sam. Sam, we had left off talking about the police with the procedures and the threat assessment, and are the police racist? And then that kind of moving more into a class warfare. And I wanted to hear a little bit more about the class warfare side of what you believe is going on here.
Well, you have to understand policing culture. It's a culture of bullies. The policemen, when they get their 35 minutes of training on the Constitution in the academy, they're not trained on how to protect your rights as a human being. They're trained on how to circumvent the Constitution and not get in trouble. That's what a constitutional law class is in the police academy in 2016 in the United States of America. And it's disgusting. And what you really find is that the police pick on people that are vulnerable. They use their force against people that are vulnerable. And if it's Tamir Rice in a park, everybody screams racism. But if it's a white kid in Michigan that flashes high beams at a sergeant who then picks a fight with him and then tases him and shoots him 7 times, nobody says racism. And so, like I said before, we've got to look past the prism of racism to understand this problem correctly. It really is a culture of bullies. It's a comply or die culture. And my attitude is, if you're arresting someone for not paying a cigarette tax, and the arrest technique that you and your men choose causes damage beyond the maximum penalty allowed by law for not paying a cigarette tax, maybe you need a different arrest technique. Maybe killing someone for selling a cigarette is not acceptable.
Agreed.
Now here's my point. If the mayor of New York were to have one of his cronies come up and bum a cigarette off of him, he said, yeah, I'll give you a cigarette for $1. And the chief of police of New York was sitting next to him, do you think he'd arrest the mayor? Absolutely not. You are 100% correct. But if a businessman complains and says there's a man on the street corner selling individual cigarettes and he's not paying a tax, what do? They come up and choke the guy out. He dies 40 minutes later, and they all pretend like choking him didn't really kill him. And that's why I say it's not about race. They killed a white guy in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a mental health patient, for camping illegally on some rural ground. Since when is trespassing reason to execute someone? They killed a white veteran, a veteran of the Korean War, in his own home because his sister called and said, he's not answering his phone. I want you to check on him. So at midnight, they bust into his house and they shoot him because he hears them coming through the door and he picks up a revolver. And instead of back out, they just kill him. It's a culture of violence that is exacerbated by a code of silence problem. The police are wholly incapable of getting rid of the criminals in their own ranks. And there's a reason why. There's a way we can fix this. In the military...
I was going to ask what the solution is and how much of this it pertains to the fraternal order of police.
Right. In the military, if you're given an illegal order, not only are you expected to reject that order and not follow it, but you'll be prosecuted if you don't. Here in Missouri, I don't know about all the other states, but here in Missouri, all law enforcement. So if you're given an illegal order and you don't follow it, you will be fired and you will be blacklisted and you will not work as a policeman. And that's really a tragedy. We don't give our policemen any protection. I can tell you in Ferguson, when they surrounded our building with 50 officers and said, we're going to take your guns, and we said, no, you're not. And I told the lieutenant, this isn't going to go the way you think it is. Those guys have 4 tours of duty and suppressed machine guns. Your guys have handguns. You better call your captain and figure it out before you get a lot of good people killed. And he looked at me and he said, Sam, I got a mortgage. I got a house that's not paid off. I only got 5 years left. I'm just following orders. That's what an at-will employee does that has no recourse.
Well, let me ask. This comes in 2 parts. How much internal personal conflict have you found within yourself in training these folks and having the knowledge that you do? And
none. I'm teaching them the proper way to respect people's rights and the proper use of force. I have no internal conflict. I've been fighting this issue for 30 years.
Well, and then the second part is how much grief have you caught for the training that you've given?
None. The guys that I've trained most of them leave my classes understanding that when you take a life and use lethal force, it's not just bad for the dead guy. It's not just bad for the dead guy's family. It's horrible for you and your family. You're going to have your gun removed. You're going to have mandatory counseling. You're going to be suspended for a time. You're going to go through all sorts of psychological and emotional things. There is an emotional cost to taking human life. Humans are not designed to do this. It's not what we're made for. And so if you have to do this to save another life, so be it. But understand there's a cost to that for you and your family as well.
Well, I tell you, I, for one, am thankful that you're the guy training them then. I
don't train everybody, obviously.
Well, we appreciate anybody out there trying to be a voice of reason. And see if I can appropriately follow up with Mr. Ray Lewis here. Are you still with us, sir?
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
I wanted you to kind of piggyback off of that and see if that was a shared sentiment that the police have a culture of bullying.
Yeah, the police invariably feel that they are the law. Before I was a cop, I was with another friend, and we were in a car, and we were stopped, and he didn't have ID, and they took us in, which, excuse me, right there was bullying. But in this police station, my friend was telling the cop, two of them, what are you holding me for? I want to know what you're holding me for. That's my constitutional right to know this. And my response was, I just wanted to get us out of there that night. My response was, they can hold you for anything they want to hold you for, which was true at the time. They are the law. And, of course, people say, well, yeah, do it. And it was my theory, do whatever you have to do to get out of the situation. I'm not here to make points on my constitutional, scholarly ability here. I just want to get out of here. And so anyway, once I said that, once I told my friend in front of the officers that the law is what they say the law is, well, right away I was a good guy, and they let us go. And so that was my theory. But there's a bullying tactic throughout the police department, because if you want to report a problem with the police, who do you go to? Are you going to go to the police? Obviously not. Are you going to go to your local council person or local politician? No. That politician, he values your vote, but he also values much greater the backing of the police union when it comes to election. And so he's not going to go to the police department and file a complaint on your behalf because he doesn't want to incur the wrath of the union. So where do you go then? You can't go report the bullying to the police department. You can't report it to your elected official. Where do you go? You don't go anywhere. So yeah, definitely there's an attitude of I'm the law, and that coincides with being a bully.
Well, and let me ask, and I appreciate your and Sam's candor both. Let me ask, what is it like for you then to see the United States have this, what seems like an awakening of activism and things? Tell us a little bit about that, and does it make you hopeful? Does it, where does that put you?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me very hopeful. Before the Occupy movement 4 years ago, I had a lot of these feelings. I realized the government was corrupt. I realized how corporations were poisoning our food, our air, our land. But what could I do as a person? But then the Occupy movement came around, and boy, that really hit home. It was a place where I could go, enjoy, and engage with 1,000 other people who were feeling the same way, and across the country, you had Occupy sites. In fact, the movement was so strong that the Department of Homeland Security, operating under the auspices of the super rich, had a 3-day period where they annihilated the 17 biggest Occupy sites across the country within 3 days. So it was orchestrated by DHS because the filthy rich, the rulers, realized that, hey, this is a threat to us. We don't want more and more people going to these Occupy sites. We don't want the message of these Occupies getting out to mainstream America. Got to destroy them now. And it was very successful. Those sites are no longer in existence. However, the people went back into communities, and there are large actions everywhere across the country now, which there was not before the Occupy movement. So yes, I'm hopeful. Or if I wasn't, I would not be involved to the extent I am.
In your protest activities, how much of what Sam has said and what Ray has said pertaining to the police and the culture of police, how much of that have you seen?
As far as the police, I mean, even before like protesting, whatever, in the streets, or pretty much like even before any of that. I mean, even when I was younger, I mean, the police, like Sam has stated, they're bullies. They are the law. I mean, in all reality, they are. It's like it's like that tell to the judge type scenario. You know what I mean? No matter what, it's like they can just arrest you and charge you with anything they want, and they'll basically, once it's out of their hands, like. Whether you could be 100% completely innocent of any wrongdoing, but they'll just arrest you. Once they arrest you, you're into the court system, and you're in court like 5 or 6 times. You're losing money because you're not at work. You're spending money because you have to pay for a lawyer if you hire a lawyer. Even if you don't have to hire a lawyer, you're still paying court filing fees and paying like $100 lawyer fee for a court-appointed lawyer that doesn't really do anything for you anyway. But I mean, as far as the protests, I mean, in Ferguson, for example, they indiscriminately were attacking anyone and everyone. There were clergy members wearing fluorescent yellow jackets that said clergy right on them. They were arresting them. We had an action at the St. Louis Police Department headquarters. They came out the front door, pepper spraying and literally trampling over women, older women, middle-aged women, children. I mean, the riot squad comes stomping down the street, and they line up across the street, facing off with the protesters that were in the street. The protesters were in the street at the time where mothers, grandmothers, young kids, older kids, men, you know what I mean? So, and it is class warfare, I mean, it's on a large scale as far as like government type deal. It's not. There's no racism involved. It's us against them. It's the rich against the poor. But when you boil it down to like on the street level, as Sam has stated, like some of the officers that he's trained, like there is racism on a street level, but once you get higher up, it's less racist, let's say, in regards to like how people are treated. I mean, it's like basically if you got money, you're cool, and if you don't, you're not. So I mean, it's all about the money. Yeah. The police officers in Chicago. I mean, those cops, like at the street protests, they ride their like mountain bikes, and they will hit you with the mountain. It happened actually to 4 people at the march that we at the 5 of us had left Ferguson to go to in Chicago. They will hit you, assault you with the mountain bike, and then arrest you for felony assault on a police officer, which carries up to a 15-year sentence. So I mean, the cops will basically do anything and whatever they want, and knowing that they can get away with it. I mean, it's like the police officers, they're trained. I mean, obviously not by Sam, but I mean, they're trained in many cases, shoot first. I mean, and when they are trained to shoot, they're not shooting to, disable or injure. They're shooting to kill. So it's the police officers on the streets. I mean, it's pretty bad. I mean, like. A lot of the police officers that I can honestly say that I have met 2 police officers in my entire life that were actually cool. You know what I mean? Like years ago when I was painting for a company in Massachusetts, and we painted numerous Boston police stations, and just sitting there and while I'm working and they're just hearing the conversations that would go on between the police officers. There was one officer talking to his superior about their quota on like getting tickets or whatever, and like he was just telling stories about how he would just pull people over for no reason whatsoever and start writing tickets, like just whatever. And then there were other stories, I mean, some of the cops were telling like some stories involving racism and whatever. But I mean, and a lot of the cases, like as far as like the police shootings, like I mean, it's not like on a street level. And as Ray said, there are two different kinds of police officers. Like some, you know, but on the street level, there are black police officers killing black people. There are white police officers killing white people. It's not about race. It's about, as Sam said, it's like who they can attack, who is vulnerable. I think one of the most epic, like I mean, I was pretty busy in Ferguson, but I mean, at the you know, there's sometimes where I was like taking pictures of the accidents that we were at and some videos, and one of the most epic pictures that I have is Bishop. He was one of the main organizers of the actions that we were down there for like 2.5 months. But one of the most epic pictures is he has his hands behind his back and his jacket's like half torn off of him, and he's a black man from Ferguson. He's a bishop at a church, and he's being arrested by 3 black police officers in riot gear. Like that speaks volumes. Because as far as the world knows, like on the mainstream media, it's like they're saying it's all about race and it's this and it's that and the other thing. But yet there's a picture of a black man being arrested by black police officers because a black man was killed. So where's the race involved there? It's not. It's you know, it boils down to like us against them.
And if I saw you from a distance, say I'm an officer, you're a protester, and I look at you from a distance and I see your skin, what skin color are you?
Oh, that's funny that you asked that. When I get arrested, I mean, I've been arrested numerous times in Massachusetts. When I get arrested in Massachusetts, on the police report it says that I'm a black male with black hair and brown eyes. Both times I was arrested in Ferguson, they wrote on the police paperwork that I was a white male with blue eyes and brown hair. So you tell me.
These folks don't even know what you look like. That's amazing.
I mean, to be clear, my father is black and Indian, and my mother is Polish and Irish.
Okay, yeah. So you're an American.
Yeah, I'm a human.
Yeah. That's a lot of truth and honesty, man. I appreciate that. Heather, I wanted to see what your thoughts were on your interactions with police to the events that you've gone to, and then I have a follow-up question for that.
I think here in Columbus we happen to be pretty lucky. I would say 99% of the rallies, protests, things like that we have, we generally have a good relationship with our Columbus Police Department, our state troopers at the State House. When I go to other cities, I come home feeling very lucky. I mean, I'm sure we have some problems in the departments, but when it comes to protests and things, I think that we are very lucky. And I attribute that to, I guess, maybe how we choose to handle them when we're there. A lot of us are on a little bit of a different level and realize we're going to see these people every weekend. We do disagree on a lot of things, but at the end of the day, we are human beings. We're going to have to interact with each other. I would rather be at a protest and hopefully finish it out than end up going to jail over something stupid because I'm mad and want to yell and, you know, act crazy to these people because they don't generally treat us like that. So I think in Columbus we're lucky.
I agree, and I think that needs to be known, that a lot of the systemic problems that happen don't carpet and blanket the entire nation. And now the second question here takes us on a different path. For the people who do not know who Black Bloc is and believe that they may be some kind of racial organization and aren't aware of who they are, who is Black Bloc?
Well, I guess the more appropriate question would be, what is Black Bloc? Black Bloc is a tool and a tactic that anybody can use. Anybody can Black Bloc. If you can look at it in a couple different ways. One, if you're at a protest and you see a group of people showing up in black, it is a, how would I want to say, that's something to behold. That's something to look at, to be concerned about, to question, to wonder, who are these people? What are they capable of? They're not, your average protester. They don't have anonymous masks on. They don't, have their protest signs. They can be used in many different ways. A lot of the time, Black Bloc is used against, I would say, like organizations like a Starbucks or banks, anything commercial like that, that they could be breaking windows, destroying property, tagging. So they can be used in all sorts of different ways, all which I feel are beneficial, and I feel the Black Bloc tactics are one thing that a lot of our groups and our protests are lacking, and I wish we could see more of. They are effective, and I encourage it.
I appreciate that, and that was the perfect answer, really letting people know what they are and what they are not. I appreciate that. Tammy, I want to move on to you, and this is one of our questions that comes from Roger Nichols. He asks, what is it going to take to get people here to the streets, like in the EU, for example, Greece, or more recently, Ireland? Basically, what is it going to get to get a lot of people in streets in America? What do you think it is?
I think I kind of stated it earlier. It would have to be something hard-hitting, and in my own opinion, and I don't speak for everybody, but I think it would have to be finances, like banks collapsing, something major that affects everybody, where it's out there in the public, where they get the full blunt force of it.
So we're looking like catastrophe level event.
Yeah, in order to get that many people, that's just my own personal opinion.
Well, no, I think a lot of people would agree with you. Me being one of them. Unfortunately, we just don't have what we need right now. But maybe we will soon enough. I don't know.
I can speak for the white suburbs.
All right.
Yeah, I think men won't have to be able. They'll have to not be able to buy beer, and women will have to not be able to buy toilet paper and tampons, and then the white suburban USA will wake up.
Yep. I think you're right. Just a couple consumer goods. We're only a couple consumer goods away from a full-blown revolution.
Yeah, if we could cut the logistical train of tampons and beer and knock out their Monday Night Football, we could kick this thing off.
Yeah. And Tammy, let me go back to you. What do you think on this one? This question comes from Sosby Thomas, and I know I'm not pronouncing that correctly. I apologize. How do we spread this knowledge and awareness that we are aware of the fraud?
Well, I think that we're all doing it in our own ways. I mean, from the protests to the rallying, to just like Heather said, I do believe that when you're involved in your community, you should go to the meetings, because when you go to the meetings and you're aware of what's going on, you don't have to prove to your neighbors that this is going on. You can actually invite them to also attend these meetings so they can see for themselves. Because the best proof is not through somebody else's eyes, it's what you see yourself. And you know what is going on in front of you in your community. You could do it those ways, or via the PDF files and the flyers. I mean, or mass numbers. I mean, we were talking about that earlier, mass numbers, but what does it take to get those mass numbers? Like, I don't choose to say, although I'm an anarchist, I say voluntarism, because when people think anarchy, they think of chaos. So for me, it's just, you get more attention by saying you're a voluntarist. And voluntarism, people have to practice certain ways of, certain ways of, like Justin, I think it was, earlier, of, self-discipline. Understand and accept that the government is institutionalized violence. Learn to teach and live by a non-aggressive principle. Not saying that you have to be a pacifist, but you don't want to initiate or coerce, physical force. And obviously you want to just be able to defend yourself, but learn to think logically. And once you learn to think logically, you learn to critically think, and that's definitely important. Take responsibility for your actions and safety, but there's so many different ways.
Absolutely, and you're another person with a lot of tools in your arsenal there. And how much of the tactics used against us do you believe, class warfare shrouded as racism?
Oh, no doubt. I believe that in every aspect, and just by the clothes that you wear and the way that you represent yourself in any manner. I mean, it's crazy that they can just judge you by that, but unfortunately, it really is the truth.
Absolutely.
I'm facing that myself right now. We're in my own home. We're in the midst of remodification/foreclosure, and out of nowhere, we had a sign taped on the door, no certified letters, nothing. We are a Commonwealth. However, we are supposed to be getting these certified notifications. Haven't received anything. We're thinking that we're waiting for a remodification. Just over the weekend, we have a note taped on our door saying that the landlord is taking us to court for breach of lease and owner of real property. So on March 2nd, I will be facing my quote-unquote landlord that I never even knew that I had.
There are laws that have to do with the rights of the person that is there, as long as they prosper the land or build equity in a structure.
Oh yeah.
So I would look into some of that, because it sounds kind of icky to me.
Well, you know what it is that a lot of this is like a big scam with the bankers going on right now. They're doing this with people who hold mortgages, and in my case, my mom is seriously sick. She has emphysema. She needs her heart valve replaced, COPD, and I took my life savings to build an addition on her house when my father passed away to move in to take care of her. So luckily, she keeps all of her papers, and going through everything, I found originally the original deed. I found it ironic that up until 2 months prior to my father's passing, she had mortgage insurance. So I don't know what happened between those two months. I do know that she had one bank and somehow got switched to another, but I wasn't here at the time. So I'm kind of thinking she was scammed out of all that. So I did some research, contacted friends, and just sent some certified letters to my landlord requesting his if you go to, we sent him the RESPA form, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or the RICO Act or anything, but a lot of banks are doing that, and a lot of people think it's I heard it all last week. It's the BLM, and actually, the BLM has nothing to do with residential houses, but it's definitely going to be, everybody's on that BLM kick, ever since Oregon and the Bundys, but it's crazy that.
Let me ask you this: how much of being an activist has helped you with legal matters?
Well, you know what? It's helped me myself with learning the knowledge, because whenever I run into a problem, I know that I can educate myself with that.
See, and there's a perk right there, a reason for people to get on board.
Yeah, there's crap that I just learned about, when it comes to, because I knew nothing about banking. I knew corruption or whatever. I don't have a bank account. When I had a business, it's the first thing, when I started my business, I had to have the bank account. Naturally, they make you have a bank account. It's kind of like smartphones make you have a Google account. You know what I mean? Like it's required. But I didn't know about the RICO Act. I didn't know about a lot of the things that I can actually teach people now. And I hope that whatever comes out of it, I am able to learn something, and I can help other people who are going through the same scenario, especially with foreclosures, because in my neighborhood alone, I think there was like 56 homes foreclosed.
Yeah.
And that's crazy, and it's happening left and right. I mean,
yeah, that's what I was going to
crazy.
say. Is we're seeing it everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. And you know what? These people, I've literally seen people. I know 2 people who literally, the minute they've gotten that foreclosure letter, they just up and move. They get scared and they leave.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and that's what we're looking at. It's very scary. It's a scary prospect for sure.
Yeah, and you know what's even scarier is that I called the court because first I researched this business because my, it's back to my supposed landlord. It was his business name versus my mother's name. So I did research on the business, and there was no business. It didn't exist. So then I went to the Better Business Bureau. No, it didn't exist. So when I called the court, and I tried to explain this to the clerk there, she told me that basically they didn't care. He came in, he just filed for it, and they did their job by filing it. I'm like, so it doesn't matter, like he could just walk in and say, my name is whatever, and I am this building, and blah blah blah. She's like, oh well, we're just here for the filing. I'm like, so you're filing, but I have to come to court. It makes no sense.
That just harkens to the overall failure of our system.
Absolutely, and how corrupt they are. Because if I was to go there and not know anything, like the RICO Act and everything in between, I have so much more to learn. But just out of what I've learned so far, if I was to just walk in there and just know nothing and not challenge it, we would be evicted within 10 days.
Yep.
And that's sad because I'm sure many people have gone through that not knowing anything, and it can very well still happen to me.
Yeah. And that's a lot for people to unpack too. But I think the large part of the focus there is that if you're going to do something, if you're going to be part of something, then make sure that it's virtuous. And we can prove where activism brings virtue. And for the next line here, we're not going to do so much direct questions. I want to move on to, I'm going to give you guys a general sense. I'm going to give you a general question. And I'm looking for your own personal answers from your own personal experience here. So, I think this time we'll start with, let's go to, who haven't I been to recently? Sam?
I'm here.
All right, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Heather and then Mike. I want to ask you on general terms, if you had an opportunity, much like what we are creating, to speak to your countrymen and women of every shade, and you knew that just for a moment in time you had their ear, what would you tell them? What would you say?
Well, I think I would start with disagreeing with most of the panel here, and I would remind them of Major General Hollingsworth's statement that amateurs study tactics and professionals study logistics. And if you understand what that means, you understand why it's so important to vote. Voting may not have the impact that you want it to have, but it can certainly slow down the criminals. And by slowing down the criminals, it allows us to establish bases of operation in the states to combat this criminal behavior. We need safe havens. We need counties with constitutional sheriffs. We need a president that will appoint Supreme Court justices that defend the Constitution and allow us to operate longer and less impeded. And so I think voting is incredibly important. Voting intelligently is incredibly important. And I would also say you will know for sure that your federal government and that your local government is at war with the human race when they start hiding the names of policemen, when they start hiding the names of federal agents and highway patrolmen, like in Oregon, that the men that shot Lavoy Finicum. When these people can operate in secret from behind a mask, that will be the clearest of all signs that your government is at war with the people and will never allow themselves to be held accountable.
I agree, and we were talking a little bit about that before, and I'm going to jump back to that kind of towards the end, because I think that's a huge topic that needs to be discussed.
Well, I can tell you this. I've studied tactics. I've studied insurrection at War College. I've studied a number of things. And if we don't have places in each state where people like Mike and John and Sam and Terry and Heather and all these people can meet, assemble peacefully and privately, when we lose that, the battle's lost.
Yeah, agreed. What do you think is our largest contributing factor right now for everybody that is waking up or is feeling a willingness to come forward and speak? What do you think that's attributed to?
Well, let's talk about barriers first. The biggest barrier to us coming together is hatred and pride. You really have three things: hatred, pride, and ignorance. So if we can lower the level of ignorance and educate people, if we can lower the level of hatred for people that aren't exactly like us, if we can take care of these things, okay, then people will flow together. Humanity will naturally coalesce and deal with the evil in their society.
I like it. And like I said, we're going to come back to the secret police. That's a really big topic. But let me jump over to Heather, and then it'll be Mike, and then Sequandra. Heather, same question. If you knew that you had the ear of your countrywomen and men for a brief moment, what would you tell them?
Well, speaking as a mother, I guess first and foremost, always try to put that in the front of people's minds that, it is not just about us today. We have future generations that are going to be picking up the pieces of what we don't deal with today. And, having the internet and so much information at our fingertips at all times, there's no reason why we should not be an informed, educated public. And we don't have really any excuse to anymore say, well, we didn't know. We do know. It is blatant and it is clear and it is in our face every day. So, I guess, first and foremost, understand we do have a responsibility to our children and to future generations. And we have a responsibility to what this country is going to become, what its future looks like. You don't think about it in these terms, but history is being written as we speak. Our actions or lack thereof, this is telling our story, the story of America. That's crazy to think about, but that's the truth. So, we have to, get up, do something, quit living this life where, it's only our house and our neighborhood. There's a much bigger picture we need to look at and be involved in.
Agreed. And knowing and understanding that this is for the future. This isn't something that we're selfishly doing, just for us. This is for the people that come after us. That's just another one of the things that binds us all.
I also think, and this ties in with the voting and stuff, it is not just somebody who we say is our state representative. It is not just their job to make sure things get done, because clearly that doesn't happen. That's one of my problems is I look at state representatives and I look at these candidates and they don't represent me. They just don't. At the end of the day, some of the things that they are okay with, some of the things they spend my tax dollars on are atrocities. And so when they say, if you don't vote, you can't complain, well, let's say I did vote for that person and they did horrific things. Is that my response? Do I take responsibility for that? That's something that's very hard for me to deal with. I know what goes on, and it's not acceptable. As a moral person, we wouldn't accept any of these behaviors in our own neighborhood. we wouldn't accept thieves and robbers and liars and murderers and kidnappers in our own neighborhoods, but yet we do accept it by our government. So you tell me where, what sense does that make? I can't justify my neighbor doing those things, but I'm supposed to justify my president, representatives, other people doing that? I don't understand where the difference is. So that's extremely bothersome to me.
I like that. I like how you speak to that rational disconnect. And if people could look at it on those terms for what it really is, that it's a governing body of people committing evil atrocities on your dime in your name, really think that would be a game changer.
It's true. I mean, you consider it like a sort of mob mentality. I mean, they could be like paid hitmen. If I did that in my own neighborhood, I'd be in jail. The person I hired would be in jail. You'd go down a laundry list, but because there are a number of them that do it together, that makes it okay? I mean, let me know what that number is. Because apparently if you organize under a certain, set of standards, then murder is okay. And I'd like to know, what are those standards? Because I did not get the memo.
Yeah. Well, and again, that harkens to you got to be in their club. Are you able to? I want you to answer one more thing before I go over to Mike. This was something that John covered, but I also want to know from your perspective, what are some of the things that people that are new to protest and activism should be aware of? Can you answer that along the lines of people and new membership, new people coming into these folds? What should they be aware of?
I think something that can apply to everyone is be patient with people. I see so many different groups and individuals calling someone out, like they didn't do this correct or they didn't do that right and things like that. Rather than, putting someone down, why don't you send them a message and be like, what would have really worked for your protest if you would have tried this? Like, we are all in this together. It is not like who can get the most people to show up or, who has the biggest. It's not a fan club. I think that's important. And I'll tell you something that to me goes a long way is just a slight encouragement, saying, hey, I saw what you did. I saw how much time you dedicated or, whatever the case may be. Encouragement really does go a long way. It's a hard road out there. I mean, you got to think about it. Most of us have families and full-time jobs and, running kids to soccer and being home for dinner and all of those, and activism on top of it. So we all have a lot on our plate. Be patient and kind with each other and take your experience and what you've learned and, share it with other people, not because you know more, but because you want them to be able to do better.
Man, I knew you were the right person to ask. That was wonderful, man. That was really, really good. I appreciate that. I'm going to go to Mike. I want to know if you knew that you had the ear of your fellow countrywomen and men, what would you tell them?
From my angle, when it comes to speaking to my countrymen and women, is basically wake up, stand up. I don't give a shit if you vote. I don't give a shit if you pay attention to the news. It's not giving you what you need. You can't expect to vote somebody in to represent you and stand for something that you have no idea what the hell they're doing behind closed doors. I don't care how much you think you know. You don't know the Earth's round unless you've been up high enough to see that it's in fact round. I'm not saying it's flat, but good Lord, have mercy. I've never seen it. I've never seen God. I've never seen this. I've never seen a politician really bend over backwards to help any of us without padding his pockets. So if you're going to get out, you want to care, you want to bitch about what's going on, then you need to stand up and do something about it, whether it's making phone calls, signing petitions, getting in the streets, forming a black bloc, an armed militia, whatever you got to do something. Because what you're doing now is not working, and the fear of being a debt slave is just going to keep screwing us all over and over and over and over again.
Agreed.
That concludes the question and answer portion of our show. We are now moving into a free-form conversation that is unscripted and uncensored. Parental discretion is advised.
Let's go ahead and open it up to open discussion. I'll start it off with the secret police, and wherever it goes from here is fine. But in Oregon, they've already passed it. In Virginia, they almost passed it. And what this entails, one of the things that it entails is, if I'm a cop and I kill you, now my name doesn't have to be released to the public.
We saw this when it comes to the riot cops coming out with their no badges, no name tags, no nothing. I mean, they do that on purpose. It's no different than Black Bloc coming out dressed in all black. It's a menacing look. There's no way to identify them. But all this is realistically going to do is it's going to ramp up the hacktivist end of things, because those boys are going to end up getting busy, because they're going to have to be busy. And personally speaking, I think the more you hide from the public, the more volatile the situation becomes. And since we are a violent country, there is going to be a violent outcome. Because if they're not going to do anything about these police, though I'm not supporting it, I don't blame these communities for killing police. You know, it's unfortunate that we don't look at police as human beings that create, you know, terrible situations and commit heinous murders. I mean, it's just because you have a badge doesn't make you special. You're supposed to be a pillar in a community, and you're not. You are not setting an example. I can't teach my kid to run to a cop. Not with everything that's going on right now. I can't trust him to go to a cop. I'm not saying the cops are bad, but not the way I was raised.
Yeah, definitely. Just like you said about, like, you know, we people don't look at cops as human beings, but I mean, at the same time, they don't look at us as human beings. I mean, we're just like cattle, you know, being brought, you know, herded, and, you know, whatever. They get, you know, these police come out to a protest. They're ordered to, you know, either provide security or do whatever. If there's any protests in the streets or anything, they don't come out there. You know, they don't care what the reason is. They don't care what the protest is about. They don't care about the cause, the reason, the people that are involved. They don't care about any of that. All that coming out, they're seeing all these people in the streets as the enemy. And I mean, I can tell you from personal experience, like, when one of the times that I was arrested in Ferguson, the cop was sitting there, he's like, what are you doing out here? And like, why are you doing this? And then the other thing, and like, you know, well, what are your plans? And I'm like, you actually think I'm going to tell you? I'm like, you're a fucking cop. You know what I mean? So the dude reaches up on his chest and grabs a little flap and flips it down over the word police on his chest. And I'm like, dude, you think I'm that stupid? Like, you know what I mean? Just like as Mike just said, like, they're coming out with no badges, no nothing, covering up their names, covering up their badge numbers. Like they don't give a shit about us. They haven't for a very, very, very long time. And now they're basically, pretty much in my opinion, they're being ordered. You know, they're just following orders. Like, they're ordered not to care about us. Like, we're just, like I said, we're just cattle being herded.
Well, the biggest problem I personally see with it is there is a difference between us and them. That is the funky part about it. I befriend everybody that I possibly can. I've shaken a lot of cops' hands, and I'm usually the first one to be close to them when we're at these, you know, events. You know, it's easier to hide in plain sight kind of deal. But what are you going to do? What can you do when you have the Blue Lives Matter being able to put billboards up everywhere, and you have suburbs of America crying for the hearts of these 5 police that have been killed, but yet how many thousands have been killed over the last few years? You know, we are at war in our own country, and people don't see a militarized police state. They see backing the blue. Truth is, these fucking cops are overarmed and undertrained. They're feared for their life every chance they possibly get. I'm not saying all of them, but it's happening more and more. So maybe Sam can jump in on that and shed some light on the situation. But we're not going down a good rabbit hole right now.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about solutions, if you guys don't mind, not just problems.
Yes, that is the point.
Yeah, I think the first thing we have to do, priority-wise, is start voting for constitutional sheriffs. You've heard that from me before. But more importantly, or as important and concurrently, we need to start passing laws at the state level that reward police officers for constitutional behavior and imprison police officers for unconstitutional behavior. I got into an argument with a police chief of St. Louis County named John Belmer. You can search Belmer and Oath Keepers on YouTube and listen to the whole conversation. But this son of a bitch told me that I was not allowed to carry a gun in Missouri. Told me I had to have a security license. Well, our state laws say that I can open carry a gun, My federal licenses say I can open carry a gun. I manufacture them and sell them to policemen, for God's sake. Okay? And he's saying a county ordinance trumps a state law. And so I confronted him on that. I said, you need to respect and obey our state laws. His answer to me was, I have lawyers for that. I can deal with that later. That man should be in jail. He should not be the head of a law enforcement agency. And so passing state laws that give policemen a legal path to refuse an illegal order will cut the head off this snake, which are these politicized police chiefs that are running the show. And so that's a big step in the right direction. Getting constitutional, like right now we're working in Missouri to pass a law that says all heads of all police agencies must be elected by the people in their jurisdiction. Just that alone is a game changer. If you add to that a policeman is required to refuse an illegal, unconstitutional order, and he'll be prosecuted if he doesn't, just like it is in the military, then we don't have these ass clowns in white shirts and badges playing games with our rights. I mean, there are real answers out there, but we got to get after it, and it's going to take people willing to vote to make it happen.
Well, you mentioned it earlier on the call. The FOP brings so much money to the table. You know, mayors, city managers, police chiefs, all these. There's a lot of pressure coming in from that side of the deal. You know, so would it be safe to assume that beginning this change should start in the academy instead of running it with drill instructors and making it us and them?
Well, the academy is a whole nother issue. But the only way you circumvent the money is to stop letting the fox watch the henhouse. We have police. When you go to file a complaint with Division of Professional Standards, it's a sergeant or lieutenant that takes your complaint. Okay, that's working for the same department you're complaining against. We have to have an established by law civilian review boards to review complaints of police actions. And they have to be not prosecutors, not policemen, not anybody that has a conflict of interest related to the topic at hand.
Should we do that?
And I was just going to say, like, just like Sam mentioned, it's like, you got these people that are working together. I mean, that's the same thing as, like I mentioned before, like the cops are going to do whatever they want and charge anybody what they want. And once you get in the court system, you're basically screwed. You know what I mean? You have this triad of people, you got your public defender, that is supposed to be defending you. He is being paid by the court system that has, the police officer has charged you with a crime through, and you're being prosecuted by somebody that works for the court. It's just they're all on the same team, yet you're supposed to like go through that. I mean, I got to chime in on the voting. It's been brought up numerous times, but I mean, as far as voting, it's an illusion of choice. It's basically more like of the divide and conquer. I mean, when you vote, you're basically legitimizing the system, and I personally don't agree with any of that bullshit. I mean, it's all bullshit. I mean, they give you this illusion of choice that you're, picking between these two people, and one's going to fight for you, and one's going for this, and one's going for that, and blah, 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 blah. And they're all getting money, and they're all being paid by the same people and the same bullshit, and it's just, it's ridiculous. I mean, you're going to vote for the lesser of two evils? I mean, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. I voted one time in my life, and honestly, it was when Barack Obama first ran for president. When I went in there, I wrote my own name on the ballot and said yes for the marijuana law. Walked out of it. That's the only time I've ever voted. I mean, I think it's all bullshit. Like I mean, as far I don't agree with any like the government. I don't agree with anybody having. I mean, like I've talked to you guys before. I'm not gonna give anybody the power over me to tell me what I can and cannot do, especially somebody that I've never met, will never meet, and is basically just getting their pockets lined, and they just sit in this office and basically like the whole government. To me, the simplest way to put it is a bunch of retards sitting in an office building, with their $3,000 suits, bullshitting over what laws they're gonna dictate to the people that, like I said, they'll never meet in their entire life. And like Mike just stated, these you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. You don't know what these people are talking about. You don't know what's really going on. So I mean, it's the whole system. And as far as that system goes, like the system is doing exactly what it was designed to do, and that's basically screw us and keep their pockets lined. So you got this system in place that's doing what it's supposed to do, and it's so corrupt to the core. Every level, from local to federal, the entire system is so corrupt, and people try to run for office, and I'm going to get in there, and I'm going to change the world, and I'm going to get in there, and I'm going to change the system, I'm going to fight from within. That's bullshit, because once you get in there, you're going to get that paycheck, and it's going to change your whole perspective, because you got a nice car, a nice house, you got all this shit, and that's just the way it is. Of course, I'm saying it's figuratively speaking, but the whole system just needs to be burned to the ground and rebuilt. And if it needs to be rebuilt, then it needs to be rebuilt with the people, for the people, by the people, the original way it was supposed to be originally. Because the way it is now, it's all bullshit. From police to politicians to the way that, like Tammy was mentioning with the mortgages and the banks and this, that, and the other thing. The bankers run the world, and they don't give a shit because they're making trillions and trillions of dollars, and we're all being left out to dry.
Let me give an alternative viewpoint to what John just laid out. If you remember when Ray talked, he talked about the rich bastards controlling everything. See, we use the label of rich, okay? And here's the truth. It's not the rich people in the United States that are screwing everybody. It's the rich bankers that are screwing everybody, okay? So knowing who your enemy is, specifically who your enemy is really important. In the American Revolution, there were guys like me that were with all of the radicals, right? Until they had their house taken by the British. They had their business and their ships commandeered by the British. If you want to read John Hancock's story, everybody hated the guy. They thought he was a weasel. They thought he was a spineless worm that wasn't going to get on board with the revolution. And guess what? The British came in and took his mansion. They took his ships. They shut his business down. And all of a sudden, he was all in. And you know what? He bought about 80% of the weapons in that area and literally financed the revolution. So if you study history and you look at what's going on, you got to be careful not to alienate people with resources. You got to be very careful to identify exactly who the enemy is and not alienate the people that you can win over down the road.
You bring up an interesting point, and this is actually a rabbit hole for me. It is the bankers. The bankers are controlling basically the New World Order that's been in effect for quite some time now, and they are the ones controlling through debt our own country. So even if we were to step forward and create a revolution and make some change here, we're going to have to get the bankers out, and then we're going to have to feel their wrath from all the other countries that they're still funding. So where are we realistically on an international level? Because what we're doing locally, county, state, and federal isn't just our country at this point in time. We are tied to, I couldn't tell you how many countries just on international level. So
look at what Iceland did.
Yeah, but Iceland's not the United States. We're the military-industrial complex with our fingers and our dick and everything. If all of a sudden we pull out and we get rid of those bankers and we become a sovereign nation again, what type of hell is going to be brought upon us for how long?
Well, I think one of the things that we need to kind of keep in mind is that we have to operate on an international level because we do have an international enemy. Now, I think we may differ on who and what we think that is, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to the moneyed elite. And we have to work from the United States to support any opposition groups to governments around the world, whether that's Raif Badawi in Saudi Arabia or the umbrella protest in Hong Kong. Anybody that is working against that moneyed elite, we have to support them. We have the infrastructure here to continue to do that and to do it in relative safety compared to what they're doing.
Yep.
So it needs to be a unified effort. If we go to war, if we stand up, we need to make sure that these other countries are doing it as well.
Yes.
Or at least set an example.
I think identifying the crooked bankers. Now, I'm going to say this, and you may disagree with me. But we have a lot of local and small banks here in Missouri. Not all bankers are crooked. Let me tell you something. My business is 2 doors from a small bank here in Missouri. I know the president of the bank personally. He hates Wall Street and the international bankers and the Federal Reserve and the federal government more than I do. So let's understand that there's people in a central control position that are the problem. It's not all bankers. It's a select group of bankers. What did Iceland do? They cut the heads off the 4 biggest banks and fixed their problem.
You see, at the same time, like you say it's like not all bankers, but it's the same thing with like the police. Well, not all police are bad, but yet I've seen, what could be a good cop stand by and, in the background and watch these other cops murder, whichever individual is, one of the thousands that has been murdered. You know what I mean? And so it's not like which ones. It's like, oh, there's not. If there are good cops, they'd arrest the bad ones. I mean, and that just brings to my mind is like taxes. You know what I mean? Like people are paying taxes. Like this bank owner that he doesn't like Wall Street and he doesn't like the Wall Street and the bankers and all all like part of the system, whatever. And you say he hates it more than you do, but what is he doing to rectify the problem? Probably nothing. I mean, he may not. I mean, as far as I know, I'm not going to assume that he's not doing anything, but yet he's like one of those other cops that's compliant, following orders, doing whatever, just staying there. You know what I mean? And people want to target. Like, I didn't pay taxes in 20 years. I don't give a shit. Like, I haven't paid income taxes. I mean, I probably paid income taxes for a total of 15 hours, if that, in my entire life. And like, you know what I mean? So I'm not gonna line politicians' pockets. I'm not going to pay for missiles that are going to blow up weddings in some other country. And, I mean, if you ask me, in my personal opinion, any activist or any protester that pays income taxes to a government that's corrupt as this one that murders people overseas and in this country, you have no right being in the street. You're paying for those riot squads. You're paying for that tear gas. You're paying for all that shit that like when, from Ferguson to Cleveland to Chicago, everywhere to Baltimore, you're paying for, like, you know what I mean? So if you're going to pay for that cop's tear gas that he's going to shoot at you, you have no business, you have no right being in the street to protest against that because you're financially funding it.
Well,
John, I have to disagree with you on that aspect because I feel that the negativity that these police officers do gets way more attention than anything that a good officer could do. Because I have seen, cops do. I mean, they could even be bad in other areas. It's just like not everybody's perfect. We all have our flaws. We all have our good. We all have our bad.
Yeah, not everybody's perfect, but I can tell you, I don't care if I'm a cop or if I'm painting houses or if I'm a protester in the street. If I see a protester doing something that's fucked up, I'm going to call them out. If I see somebody at work when I'm painting a house doing something wrong, I'm going to call them out. If I'm a police officer and I see somebody doing something wrong, I'm going to call them out regardless because that's me personally. That's who I am. That's what I'm going to do. And that, you know what I mean? So as far as like, people doing bad and like, oh, it's like Sam said, the officer that came down, he was like, dude, I got 5 years left. I got a mortgage, blah, blah. I'm just following orders. Dude, screw that, man. You know what I mean? So like, if you're going to comply, like, the number one and first foremost way that I believe to beat the system is to stop complying with it. Like by paying taxes, just following orders, by knowing something's wrong and not doing something about it, you're complying with the system and you're legitimizing it. And even voting.
John's exactly right. He's whether he realizes it or not, he's following General Hollingsworth's rule, and that is amateur study tactics, professional study logistics. If you're not voting and you are paying taxes, you're doing the opposite of what will help. The Republicans cried like babies, defund Obamacare, defund Obamacare, defund Obamacare. They wanted Congress to defund them. At what point did the American people decide to defund Congress?
Yeah.
Hello?
Right.
John's exactly right. Stop funding the enemy.
Yeah, I mean,
so how does that work when you try to get people to stop funding the enemy and then they start coming in and taking houses?
Yeah,
now, hang on. I understand where that's going to take us because that's going to be, people don't jump on it until it's happening to them. right? Like you guys talked about the people back in the first revolution, you know. But there is that fear factor of the people that live in those cookie-cutter homes all around America that they're not willing to jeopardize losing their family and their homes through that aggression. So what do you guys think the best way to move forward with, you know, and this goes back to awakening the masses.
Oh, you're going to hate my answer to that question, but there's an answer.
Are we going to vote?
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. If you say don't be relying on the government, be free, be an anarchist, but here's the thing. Are you self-sustaining? I can grow enough food with where I live and what I ranch and what I farm and what my wife bottles. We don't need anything from the government. We don't even need water from them. Okay? And so if you live in the city and you don't play their game, you're stuck. You're between a rock and a hard place. Why do you think the feds are trying to take these ranchers and farmers' land?
Exactly.
Well,
I have a question. Do you own your property? I don't mean to be intrusive, but do you own your property?
Of course.
Okay, but you
Like,
still
do
have
you
to
own
pay.
it?
You still have to pay real estate taxes, no? Every year, although you own it.
Well, there's a lot of places in this country, darling, that don't have real estate taxes.
Are you one of those places? That's my question.
Yes. As a matter of fact, if you look at Montana and Wyoming and places, there's not even sales tax in Montana.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, you have to understand that there are answers to these problems, but nobody wants to make a lifestyle change. It's not in their comfort zone, so it becomes difficult for people.
I
actually love your answer, Sam.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yep. I love your answer, Sam. Actually, the self-sustaining, and you bring up a beautiful point. It's the same thing as like it's government dependence. Is basically what you're saying. It's just like the welfare system. Like once you get the people dependent on that paycheck, dependent on the first of the month, you know, like you said, take the farmers, take the ranchers, take all this stuff, so that people cannot supply their own food to other citizens. Like that's exactly it. And all of that boils down to the system. Like it is this system that is in place in this country right now to make people stupid, to make them dependent on them, and the sad part about it, right?
I don't think that it's
hold on. They want people to be dependent on the government, but yet you're dependent on the government that is using money that they got from you. You know what I mean? So
I understand that, but it's not stupidity, because look at the situation I'm in. I mean, it's kind of like I'm trapped. I like savings into my mother's house. She's, you know, John, you know how sick she is. She's dying. You know, I have 2 children and I'm a single mother. It's like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place.
There's a lot of specific things with your situation that don't apply to, like, you know.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. We don't know everybody else's story, is what I'm saying.
But everybody has a story like hers. I mean, that's not unusual, because you've been entrapped by a system.
Exactly.
Well, we got taught even from the moment we entered grade school and even birth that we are ruled by authority, through fear of authority. So how are we supposed to become critical thinkers and evolve as human beings when we're being told we can't cross the street without a law being there saying when it's safe or not, or if it's the safest location to cross or not?
Well, there's one way to do it, and that's to have a command sergeant major for a father. Okay, you know, I can tell you that's one successful path to that, and there's probably some others we should explore.
Definitely. I can tell you, my father never took any shit from anybody, and I can tell you one thing: the reason, like Mike, you said, from school age till now, you know, there's this indoctrination, this system that's been in place to, you know, it's authority. I can tell you right here and now, I told my first grade teacher to go fuck herself and ran home across the street to my house because I lived right across the street from school. So that's probably why I'm here right now. I mean, that might have something to do with it. You know?
Oh no. Well, I think there's a path to independence, but it takes a lot of specifics, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
I'm hearing a lot of, when we're talking about the solution that's being bandied about right now is to basically hit a reset button. We take out the bankers, we do this, but this system of still entrusting a few to rule everyone is still there. So the innate issue is still it's still present. We've just started it again, so we'll run through the cycle again. Mm-hmm. And normally when you look at revolutions of the past, the most radical revolutionary becomes a conservative the day after the rebellion, and I think that's what we have to change. We have to change the idea of a reset, because if we use that, we're just going to end up with the same problem again 2 or 3 generations down the road.
Well, that's because we've ignored the principles of Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson wanted power pushed down to the local communities, where some of our founding fathers wanted more centralized control. The further we get away from centralized control, the longer we can go without having to hit the reset button.
Right. So if we completely eliminate central control, it stands that we might be able to actually form a society that doesn't have to hit a reset. And then when it comes to moving, asking people to step out of their cookie-cutter homes and make these massive lifestyle choices.
And work for a living?
Well, way beyond that. I mean, we're talking about moving to Montana or Wyoming, becoming completely self-sustaining. All of this stuff it's something that people who have been exposed to us that are at our level of understanding can see as an actual possibility, something that we might consider. We have to remember that those that we're trying to reach and those we're trying to wake up are nowhere near that. They don't even fathom that this needs to happen. We've got to speak to their level. This is one of those things that when you're talking to people and you start off with something that's verifiable fact. The federal government was basically implicated in killing Martin Luther King in a federal courtroom. This happened. It's fact.
And nobody knows it.
When you tell somebody that, they look at you like you have 3 eyes.
Yes. But understand this, that psychologically you're discussing the equivalent of an intervention with a drug addict. People are hooked on their electronic devices. They're hooked on the propaganda. They're hooked on all these different things. Like addicts, their brain has been conditioned.
Yep.
So
okay, now what about those of us who are awake and we know the situation and then we're stuck in, like in my scenario, what about the in-between from waking up and knowing to the solution, that time period in between?
I can, in my honest opinion, based on what you just said, like those that are sort of awake and the whether you're awake or you're not awake, once you realize the position that you're in and the position that this country is in and this world is in, that is like, it's just like he said, like as far as like being a drug addict, like there's going to come a time when you're going to have to make a decision. Are you going to stay with it? Are you going to stay in the current state, or are you going to make some serious life changes to try to rectify that problem on a personal level as well as on a community level, and then also, I mean,
but all that takes time.
Some of it takes time, some of it doesn't.
Okay, well, what happens though if all of us, I mean, you think about what we actually do, most of us. If all of us pack up, move out to Montana, do sustainable living, drop off the grid, that chain dies with us. We have to stay within, at least with 1 foot near the system, within the system. At some point, swear allegiance to whatever flag they offer, but teach the children quietly. And I think that's where we're at. And especially for those people that don't have the financial means to actually bug out.
Yeah.
That's your calling. That's what you need to be doing. And actually, it is what you're doing. But that's where you need to be, because you are that stepping stone. You are that person that can wake somebody up that has no clue what's going on.
There was an interesting meme I saw float around Facebook not too long ago, and it had the same picture, top and bottom. And one said, it had a guy on a podium and a crowd in front of him that said, "Who wants change?" And everybody raised their hand. And the picture directly underneath of it said, "Who's ready to change?" Nobody raised their hand. That speaks volumes to our current situation. And
Can someone tell this old man what a meme is?
You know, I could only show you. I couldn't tell you what it is.
A picture with words on it on Facebook. There we go.
Perfect. That's exactly what it is.
All righty then.
Yeah. And they actually, that's the way a lot of people in this country now get their information.
Wow.
It's
modern. Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. One of the people that's put the most information that I've seen out there as far as like Facebook and social media is, you all know Michael Pendleton. The dude, he walked, like, for the first Million Mass March, this dude walked from Tallahassee, Florida to Washington, D.C. You know what I mean? And he's been looking into, and he's been, like, you know, researching basically, like, the effects of social media and how it, like, affects people and the statistics, like the actual numbers and everything. And it's pretty much mind blowing, you know, when you read the stuff that he puts out there as far as like Facebook, and you know how much, like, it's like 80, like people get 80% of their world events from Facebook, and you know, it just I couldn't even tell you the stuff that he's posted up, like, you know, off the top of my head, but it's pretty mind blowing.
Well, you know, social media has turned into the television of modern society.
Yeah.
I mean, people that say I don't watch TV, guess what? Every second that they have a moment that they're not engaged in conversation, and some people who are engaged in conversation will immediately flip open Facebook just to scroll.
Yeah. Hey, have no fear, Mike, because now, you know, they got those apps out there where you can bring your TV right with you on your smartphone. So now you can flip from your TV to Facebook to Twitter to whatever.
Shit, that means now, you know what we can do? We can watch football, play on Facebook, and shop for tampons. All right. That's okay. They got us hooked.
There's no hope.
No. Right. So, you know, realistically, there has to be an overall end game here, a solution, because that was part of the resistance. Was we all know what the problems are. We need to address the problems, and through those conversations of the problems, we can then start focusing on the solutions. And what you guys said was this is international, and I believe Justin said it to where this is an international game, right? So if we have people on an international level that we all know, and it's a small select few, and I'm not saying this is the right idea, but this could open dialogue, that pays attention to foreign affairs and international events, and we have the international businessmen, and then we reinstate the 50 republics to where we are now more localized. Would that then allow us to begin controlling our lives again, or are we just creating another problem?
I think eventually you'd see more centralization. I mean, the tendency of government is to overreach. So I hate to say it, you know, my personal motto, I don't know, I know Dieter's heard it, I don't know who else has, but it's peace with all people, war with all governments. I don't believe that any government institution is the answer.
Agreed.
Yeah, as far as like the whole like fighting the system and everything, I saw, you know, somebody said something earlier. It was early today. I was reading it, and it said, it basically, you know, if we fight, you know, we have to fight, because if we don't, then we've already lost. But, and then, you know, somebody had commented underneath it, but fuck it, because if we, you know, you're right, but if we lose, we're going to lose together. And, like, my reason for saying that is, like, you know, like, people are scared. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people are scared. As far as, like, you know...
Well, let's talk for a minute about how tyrants succeed. And we've talked around it, but we haven't gotten really specific about it. Tyrants succeed through two main techniques. They centralize power and they create fear. So strategically, your main weapons in fighting tyranny are to decentralize power and not be afraid.
Right. Yeah, I mean, me personally, there's very few things that I'm in this world that I'm afraid of. I mean, that's a lot. That's like, like you're saying, like, I mean, Justin was saying, like, we have to do this shit. It's like, if it's not, like you said, if it's not us, who? You know what I mean? Like, do it for the kids, do it for, like, whatever your reason. Like, you got to do something. Like, you can't just sit there and, like, take this shit lying down. You can't just bend over and take it. You know what I mean? Like, you got to do something. Yeah.
Well, we're not being taught to stand up anymore. Our way to counter bullying is to go grab a teacher. Where I was raised, if I'm encountering a bully, I get pushed, I push them back. They hit me, I make sure they don't get up.
Right. The same thing. Even for my daughter, I tell my daughter, punch him square in the face. Like, I mean, don't take that shit. Don't take shit from anyone. Do no harm, take no shit.
Right. But that's not raising violent children. That's raising, I believe that's raising people with a backbone. And that's what we need. Those are free thinkers, critical thinkers, ones that aren't afraid to stand up for something they believe in, regardless if they're standing alone or not.
And a psychiatrist or psychologist would say you're setting appropriate boundaries for bad behavior.
Right.
Well, we're all primates. Or, well, I don't want to say we're primates. We're all animals at the end of the day. I think we could all be intelligent and have debates and whatnot, but realistically speaking, you're still going to have that moment where you want to press the trigger. You want to throw the punch. You want to choke slam a son of a bitch.
I like to keep things simple and, like, simplify everything. But like you just said, like, we're just sitting here talking about bullies in school. It's the same thing. It's the system. You have the bullies in school, you have the government. You have the bullies in school, or you have the police. And it's always it's us against them. Like, it's always the system. There's a system in it. There's, like, you can boil everything down and simplify everything. You can categorize things to a very basic principle, and it's all the same shit. You know what I mean? Like, you get, like we were just saying, you teach your kids to stand up to the system. You teach your kids to stand up to the bullies. Well, the bullies, we're not kids anymore. Now we're all adults. And the bully has changed from that punk-ass kid in school to these punk-ass people in office. It's the same system. It's the same thing. You know what I mean? And as far as, like,
if your child retaliates, and John, you know this firsthand from my daughter, the minute that your child retaliates to bullying, you're the one getting the phone call.
Hey, I'll be happy to go.
Well, luckily she has me and, like, mothers like Heather that go up there and, we'll fight for each other. We don't care.
Well, let me tell you a quick story about that. My daughter in 3rd grade was stabbed in the neck with a pencil in the lunchroom.
Wow.
This little boy stabbed 3 other kids. When I got to the principal's office, when I got to the office, my daughter was crying, saying this little boy stabbed her in the neck. And I said, "Did you punch him back?" She said, "No." And the vice principal said, if she swung back at that boy, she would be suspended. And the next words out of my mouth were, "That's why God made lawyers." And about that time, the principal walked out and said, "Mr. Andrews, would you please come into my office? I'd like to talk to you about this." And that was the end of it. Because you have to stand up to the bully in the lunchroom and the bully in the office.
Right.
Telling my daughter she didn't have the right to defend herself.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Sam and maybe even Justin, have you guys gone through MOAB, Management of Aggressive Behavior? There's certain ways with body language, and that's something that I'd like to start helping people out with. And I can actually show a video clip of a gentleman being arrested. Actually, Damon Lynch, he's the reverend's son, was being arrested in Cincinnati for protesting. He was standing on a sidewalk. And what happened was the police officer, basically he was telling him, back up, back up, back up. And he's like, well, I'm on the sidewalk. If I go any further, I'm in the street. Well, there's a cop standing next to him, and he basically lunged at him, threw an arm over at Damon. Well, Damon threw his hands up in a defensive position, and then all of a sudden 3 cops took him to the ground. That is another way that we've learned through some of the commercial law type stuff, is there's a way that you can actively resist arrest without resisting arrest, and that's by keeping your arms down. It's not what they say, it's what they do. So it's unfortunate, but if you put your hands up in a defensive posture, even if you don't throw a punch, you're looked at as an aggressor.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm not a protester.
Yeah, did you see that guy? The guy that was at his house. It was like, and just to throw it out there. I mean, whatever. Like, it was a white guy, white cops. There was no racial, whatever involved with this. The guy came out of his house. I'm not sure if he had a knife or a gun, but either way, like he went up to the police SUV in front of his house, and then, you know, when after the next, like, because you can't see him when he's up against the SUV, but then but the next time you can see him, there's nothing in his hands, right? And there's 3 cops standing there. He put his hands up. Once he put his hands up, the cops shot and killed him. And the reason why they said that they shot and killed him was because he put his hands up, and that they felt threatened because he put his hands up in the air, like surrendering type, putting his hands up. And they just smoked this fool in his own front yard. You know, like, so it's like, you know, again, you want to talk about some scared cops? Like, these cops were a good 25, 30 feet away from this dude. He had nothing in his hands, and they just killed him because he put his hands up in the air to surrender.
So,
you know what I mean?
I'll ask a question. What are the 2 most predominant raw emotions that humans carry with them daily?
Fear and hope.
Well, yeah, it's fear and anger. You're more apt to complain about something than you are to give praise to it, right?
Right.
So it's negativity, fear, and anger. So if both of those are what are being played by the powers that be constantly, then we're always in a state of fear, and it's a fight or flight. Whereas there's people like us on this call and others in the world where when there's shots fired, we run towards those shots. We don't run away from those shots. Or we stand strong, find cover, and return fire. Whatever you need to do to fight. But when you're playing off of fear all the time, these people don't know what to do.
I think we need to be cautious when we're discussing this aspect of it. When it comes to, you know, when it comes to human psychology and stuff like that, the studies have determined over and over again, 4 out of every 100 people are innately capable of violence, that are okay with it. We need to be very, very careful about advising people to take a violent stance when they're not prepared for it. Those people that are part of that 4%, that are natural-born killers, to use the Army's term, they know. They're ready, they're there. They're waiting for the population to give them the go-ahead. I don't know that, and it's something that I've struggled with, because I don't know that encouraging people to take a stance that is violent in any way, shape, or form, and I know that's not what you were advocating, but we're skirting very close to that subject, is a good idea, not because I think violence is necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes violence is necessary, but because I think some of the people listening may not be part of that 4%. And we don't want, you know, amateur soldiers do one thing really well. They die. And we don't need that, you know. So, and I know that's not what you were saying or where you were going with that, but I think that it's something that needs to be addressed. Everybody needs to know that not everybody is designed or cut out to be that person on the front lines. So is that where the 4%? Yeah, for every person on the front lines, you know, you have the logistical people that Sam's been talking about all night. You have those people providing support. And without them, that 4% of natural-born killers that have that psychological makeup, if they don't have the logistical support, they can't operate. So it's not a thankless position. Okay. So there's the end of that caveat.
Well, that's funny. Yeah. You say 4% because we all hear 3% all the time.
Oh, well, 3% stood up during the Revolution. 3% of the American populace took up arms. But statistically speaking, in all of the surveys that have been done, it's 4% of the population is capable of violence. That other 1% in the American Revolution, they were probably loyalists. They were in prison. Their team.
Well, I've read some places where basically there was like studies done that only it wasn't 4%. Like when it came down to like actually pulling the trigger of a firearm, it was like, you know, to take the life of another human being, and it didn't. I forget whether it specified the certain situation or the circumstances of actually taking the life of another person with a gun, but I mean, it basically said like only like 30 or 40% of the people would actually pull the trigger to take another person's life, even in the defense of their own life.
Right. That's actually from a study called On Killing. And if you haven't read it, and you're interested in military tactics and that sort of thing, it's definitely something you need to be aware of. It's something that I think every company commander needs to read at some point, because he needs to know that his unit
is ready.
Yeah, it's not entirely made up of killers.
That's Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
The author of that? Yeah, I've actually, we'll talk about that off air.
Okay.
But yes, no, he's highly...
real quick. Because I think, like, the purpose of this panel is to say, like, not everybody is militia. We don't all represent that. So that's what's important here, is it's going to take everybody with each skill set. We don't expect everybody to, be violent in the street or, to take down a building or whatever the case may be. That's just not everybody's cup of tea. That's not what you're good at. So,
exactly.
If we're going to be in the street, good.
Was that Heather that said that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that brings up, like, what Jeremy said earlier when he asked Quanda about, like, the hacktivism and, like, the different levels. Everybody has their place, and everybody has their, like, the different skill set. And
we live in a different time now to where our system is different than back then. It's not just about, everybody taking up arms against the government or, whatever it ends up being proposed. I mean, we can attack it from so many different situations. We're talking about doing the law class, talking about hacktivists, talking about people in, working on localized government. Like, this can be dealt with on so many levels, and that's what, we all represent.
You guys heard me say it many times. I'm not a group guy. I'm a team guy. Because when you go out to do something, you want to have the best guys on your team, right? Or men and women, whichever it is. You want to have your specialists to be able to do these things. So when it does come time to do an operation, not only can you not stop, you have to continue, but it's going to take all levels. Just like Justin was saying, you have to keep 1 foot in. So you got people in the courtrooms. You got people running for office, being able to get on a public platform to speak. You have peaceful protesters sitting down in the streets. You have Black Bloc backing them up. You've got armed guys, whether they're militia, reapers, or patriots, or just regular civilians standing there with arms. I mean, there's so many different levels to this that if strategized properly, you could do a lot. And that's kind of the point of this panel, is to be able to get all those viewpoints into one spot so that we can hash it out and see what can actually be done.
And how much more effective, carrying out an op, regardless of what it is, feeding the homeless or whatever, by having, like, everybody be able to participate all at one time, nationwide. So the Flint op, we're doing that on a smaller level, but it's the same thing. We've got people from all different groups working their own angles to make this happen. We had this one thought of how great this was going to be, and now it is expanded so significantly just by everybody getting involved doing the thing they do best. And, it went beyond Ohio, and so many states that got involved in that. And that's just taking water to another state. So, I mean, I think that carrying out what we're trying to do by, calling on each group and each individual to use their personal gifts, whatever it may be, we can really do some crazy, crazy good in this world.
Yeah, it's not, what's the old quote? You can't do what I can do, I can't do what you can do, but together we can do great things.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
When it comes to this convoy, one of the things that we found, because it's, without revealing too many things, it's empowering and farming the right people. It's seeing who is an influence, who has that in them, who's ready to go, giving them the proper tools and support, and having them speak instead of yourself. And that's not just to their group, that's multiple people. That's giving them jobs. It's allowing them to feel like they're a part of it and they're doing something, and letting them know they're doing a great job, but also letting them know when they fucked up. That's reality. Right. That is promise. That's hope. That is truth. And people like to operate off of that, whether they know it or not. Their feelings might get hurt, but son of a bitch, what's it look like now?
Yeah, definitely. You got to be able to stand up and say something regardless. I mean, you got to know that people aren't going to like most of the shit you say, not some of the shit you say, but most of the shit you say. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I hate to say it, but I brought to the table. I don't give a fuck. This is what we're doing.
Right. I'll tell you one thing too. Like with Sam, I just want to bring up a point too. Like with Sam and what he did down in Ferguson, like, and in regards to, I mean, I support. I love firearms. I support the Second Amendment, 1,000%. And what Sam was going to do was I mean, he can explain better. But what he was going to do was have an armed protest, an armed peaceful protest. And when people see guns, they think violence right off the bat. They just think they see guns and they're like violence. Like, guns aren't violent. We all know this. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but guns aren't violent. Spoons don't make people fat. You know what I mean? Like, it's just. It's what the thing is like with putting groups together also, you know what I mean? It's like you have people like Sam, you know, that, you know, with they come down to, you know, scenarios like that and protests, you know, to protect the business, and they have the firearms, and that's how they're protecting the businesses. But like, and he you know, you think about like the Oregon militia, not the militia, but what happened in Oregon. These people were armed. You know, they took the building, whatever. I mean, not to get into, but I'm just saying, like, the types of scenarios that were different. And then you have, like, these protests in the streets in Ferguson. Never mind the riots, but just the peaceful protests in the streets. We were still getting attacked, tear gas, rubber bullets, you know, we were still getting attacked by police. Now, think about if we had a peaceful protest, in Ferguson, armed, like Sam wanted to do in Ferguson. Like, there would have been no tear gas. No, there wouldn't have been. That's what I'm saying. Like, let me tell you what happened. That's one of the major things about bringing these people together, is because when everybody comes together, it changes the game. It's completely different.
When we did the open carry march in Ferguson, you can read about it on Rolling Stone magazine, rollingstone.com. But when we did the open carry march in Ferguson, we never even saw a policeman. We walked all the way down South Morrison up to the police station and had a speaker and prayers and said the Pledge of Allegiance, and there wasn't a policeman to be found. They did not want to come out and be anywhere near us. They weren't throwing tear gas at us. They weren't shooting rubber bullets at us. They weren't fucking with us, because when you exercise your Second Amendment rights and your First Amendment rights at the same time, everybody gets real respectful. Imagine that.
I'll speak on that. In Columbus, every protest and rally we have is usually always open carry. We've never had an issue with the police. They usually stop by.
Exactly.
You know, we pretty much know each other by name. 2 years ago, we marched about 4 different armed militias down the streets of Whitehall to support an old woman who the apartment complex was making her take her flag down. But regardless, there was not a police car in sight. And this was like an armed militia walking down the streets into neighborhoods. People were coming out on their porches, clapping, cheering. Like, I mean, it was, you know, like we were putting on a parade.
I've got a
so we don't have any issues with that here.
I've got a quick question for Heather and Sam. They're fast answers. When you, Heather, marched down the streets with the armed militia in Whitehall, were you in neighborhood streets without a double yellow line?
No.
You were actually on the commerce, the business areas, shutting it down.
We walked through the main intersection off into the neighborhoods. We were actually walking to another resident's house who was having the same flag issue.
So were you, say, like we were in Clifton on September 19th for Sam DuBose? Were you guys shutting it down like we have in so many other cities in that type of area?
It's a little different vibe. And no, it wasn't like that. No.
Okay.
We weren't. We marched on the sidewalks.
Okay. So
right up to the firehouse and the police station. Right. We didn't shut down the streets.
Okay. So what I'm seeing here from the outside looking in is, with the firearms, the limit hasn't been pushed as hard as when we shut shit down. So I wonder what would change if all of a sudden we did take to the firearms and you were to go to the streets of Columbus, because on November 5th, you guys felt what it was like. As soon as you touched that street, horsemen came up. Mounted patrol pushed you back on the sidewalk. So what would happen if all of a sudden you took those 4 armed militias or those multiple armed citizens and you put them out on the street? What would happen then?
Why? Let me ask you a question. Why, when you're carrying an AR-15, why do you need to walk down the middle of the street?
Well, Sam, I'd like to respond to that, Sam. The purpose of shutting the streets down is like, and for like, a lot of people like they're like, oh, they're talking about, you know, oh, you're shutting the streets down, you people in danger. Like, it's basically like you're trying to raise awareness, but like that's the whole purpose of like a street protest or march is to like raise awareness to any given issue, no matter what it is. And the purpose of shutting the street down, because like people, like you, if you're just walking down the sidewalk, marching down the sidewalk, people drive by, they see you on the sidewalk. It's just like, you know, this goes like a large group of people going down the sidewalk. But like when you get there in the streets and you actually shut the streets down, like when Ferguson, we shut the highway down. You know, they were shutting highways down all over the country. Like when you shut it down, that's when you're getting major attention. You're getting major attention either from the mainstream or the lamestream media. You're getting attention from the people that are actually sitting in traffic. You know, the people that are stuck. I mean, even from Ferguson to Cleveland, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, we're out there shutting it down. 90% of the people, they were cool. Like, they were like, yeah, you know, we love what you're doing. We love that you're standing up. And it wasn't, like, really an issue. There were a couple people here and there that were assholes. Like, I mean, dude in Cleveland tried driving. He actually hit one of the protesters that was in our group. My buddy Vogt, like, you know, we were out there, and, like, trying to stop this dude from driving through the crowd. I mean, you know what I mean? But the purpose of getting out there in the streets and shutting the streets down, it's like when you like, say when you're trying to like somebody's attention, you can either talk to them by walking on the sidewalk, or you can raise your voice to them by walking in the streets and shutting it down.
So
and get more attention.
It gets more media when you shut things down. Is that why you do that?
Okay. Essentially, yeah. I mean, to the simplest way to put it, yes. That's
you don't,
yeah.
Because I understand both sides of the whole street protest. What if I'm running late to work? What if I have shit to do? What if my wife's pregnant? What if somebody died because the ambulance couldn't get through? You know, all of these different things. Which
I can tell you, Mike and Ferguson, when that happened, like people were like, oh, I got to pick up my kid, and we would let them go. You know, there were any old people, we would let them go. You know what I mean? But it was just like,
that's good to have if you guys have that ability to do those types of things. That's great. A lot of times that doesn't happen, and of course there's alternate routes for people to take. But what I'm seeing here is and the only word that keeps coming to my head is there's a level of respect. When you have a firearm and you do an open carry and you go to the state capitol, these guys do not cross that line onto the State House property. They stay on the sidewalk. They obey the traffic laws because it's almost like they have, I've got my gun. You know, I got to do this.
Well, here's the problem in Missouri. You can open carry a gun. We're very, very amenable to that. But the law says you have to do it in a non-threatening way, and you can't be breaking any other law.
Correct.
Okay, so when you're carrying a firearm, people have a different view of shutting the street down or breaking a city.
So if we wanted to make a large stand, shut it down, get media attention, and basically go against those laws because regardless, they're codes and statutes that we're standing up against.
Oh, I'd take a totally different approach. I would get a permit to shut the street down for 4 hours.
See, that's the thing. If you get the permit, we had a permit for the first Million Mass March in D.C. The only reason we had that permit was so that it would allow us to actually set up a stage and have speakers for, like, you know, the people that wanted to speak and, like, for a performance in front of the White House or whatever. But if you, like, the permit is the same thing as I said about paying taxes and voting and everything else that I said. You're complying with the system. That's like, hey, Sam, I don't like you, so would you mind giving me permission to come to your house to tell you that I don't like you? You know what I mean? You're asking them for permission to do it. But here's a simple solution for as far as like combining the street protests with the armed marches. The armed marches can stay on, you know, I mean, it's as simple as it sounds. Armed marches stay on the sidewalk. The armed protesters stay on the sidewalks, and the marchers shut the streets down.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think that's a smart approach.
That's one possibility, but if your goal is to get media attention, then frickin' shut it down. Take the street for 8 hours with a permit, and you'll piss the world off. But you own that street.
They're still complying with the system, but I understand what you're saying.
That's a philosophical thing. If your goal is media attention, let's get the media attention. Who cares about the philosophy of it all?
Well, I think a little more than just media attention. It's like you are given X amount of ways to complain about your problem. Like they are giving you you can petition, you can find a state representative, beg him to please your case to people, whatever the case may be. you have a certain amount of guidelines, and that's how you get things done. What if those things don't work? What are your alternatives? What if standing in front of the State House every week doesn't do anything? What if your petitions don't do anything? You know, the shutting it down not only gets media attention, but it's going above and beyond what would be considered the, you know, permitted way to go about your grievances.
Right. Permits are a very touchy subject with us because December 4th was set up a certain way, and I'll fill you guys in on the details off air on how this was set up. It was to the point that we were able to pressure them enough to get the head of security to meet with us to discuss the permit, and we told them we're never going to pay for the permit. Because not only did we have to give them a $50 filing fee, we were already cleared on the schedule that that day was in fact open for the protest to happen at the State House property. It then had to go to a review board to make sure that they were okay with what you were trying to complain about. And then they would say, okay, you can have that date. So the date's already cleared. So now you're paying that $50 fee. Well, if all of a sudden you want to have a shutdown, you want to have a parade is what it's called, and you want to have this protest, they now charge you for any officers that they deem necessary to show up to that scene. So you're paying a $50 fee, and now you got to pay for the police department to come in and police your shit. So it's and now that's they've already told you that it's okay for you to do it. That is our property. That's what we're supposed to be able to go there for, and not every state has that law. Utah was wide open with it. If it was a political demonstration, then you didn't have to have a permit. You could show up at their capital. But if it was for some sort of like art show or a wedding or something, they required you to get a permit, put an application in.
Yeah, every state law is different. Every city and county ordinance is probably different in that regard.
Right. So the permit thing, to me, hits so close to home that I'm asking you for permission to politically demonstrate against what you're doing. And I'm asking the people I'm demonstrating against for permission to do so, and they have the ability to tell me no.
Well, let me tell you what happened in Ferguson. When we had the open carry march in Ferguson, we applied for permits over a week ahead of time, and they refused to give us a permit. But see, the media, I gave a copy to the media of the application for a permit, and I told them, fuck them. They don't give us a permit. We applied for it in plenty of time. Screw them. We're having it anyway. And they look bad.
Sam, like when you had the armed protest, you're marching on the sidewalks, correct?
Yeah, but we also took a pavilion and a big spot in front of the firehouse and the police station.
All right, but what I'm saying is that if you're marching on the sidewalks, I mean, according to the laws, quote-unquote laws, like you had no need to even file for a permit to continue.
No, we needed a permit to use the 501 pavilion, and we needed we needed a permit to be in the lot between the firehouse and the police station.
Yeah, I mean that's what I like what we did with the Ferguson 5, with the said, you know, like when we were down at Ferguson, from Ferguson to Cleveland, Chicago, like no permit, fuck permit. Like we did what we wanted, when we wanted, how we wanted, where we wanted. I mean, regardless, we got attacked by like SWAT team, riot cops. They were coming right after us. I mean, it's ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like no permits, no nothing. Like I can't stand permits. I can't stand the system if you haven't.
Yeah, but if you guys were carrying firearms, the SWAT team wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Well, if you would have paid for permit, they wouldn't be there.
Well, that's the thing. I think the original question was about, you know, the tactical implications of open carrying and taking to the streets at the same time. And I can tell you right now, most cops are going to be very reluctant to engage a group of people with AR-15s or even, you know, Ruger 10/22s.
They're not stupid. Yeah, regardless of whether they're on the sidewalk or they're on the street, I say that they would be like the same way. You know what I mean? And if you want to boil it down to like the Constitution doesn't say anything about no sidewalk or no street.
No, it doesn't.
No codes and statutes.
Let me give you this perspective. Let's assume you're a policeman, right? Okay, you're working as a policeman, and you see 10 people walking around with AR-15s. You might get a group of cops to confront those guys and ask them what's going on, but when there's 500 people with AR-15s, what are you going to do as a policeman?
Correct.
You're going to go hide because you want to go home to your wife and kids at the end of your shift.
Right?
See, and so I ask you the question: what do you think? What do you think's more effective? Shutting the street down and throwing bottles and bricks at the cops, or walking down the middle of the street with 500 people with AR-15s?
No, I'll tell you one thing. First of all, like foremost in response to the bottles and bricks, I haven't even thrown. Put it this way: if I'm gonna physically attack somebody, it ain't gonna be with a brick or a bottle. You know what I mean? I've been there when the bricks and the bottles have been thrown, but I don't agree with randomly attacking anyone.
Right.
Even cops or anyone, no matter who it is, whether it's a cop, I don't give a shit, any circumstance, anything, whatever. Just because somebody does something, say a cop does something to me, or a white person, or a black person, or whatever, I'm not just going to go randomly attack people. Like, random attacks are bullshit. I'm not agreeing with that. Like, the dude that shot those 2 police officers in New York City, that was bullshit. If you got a person, if cop A did something to me, you know, I'm gonna go at that cop. I'm not gonna go at police officers in general. I mean, I'll be one of the. I mean, I hate police, to tell you the truth, but I'm not just gonna go randomly attacking police officers. So, I mean, that's just straight up bullshit. I mean,
but I think it's important to change the name of the game, right? Okay, if you burn down buildings and throw bottles at cops, it has one effect. But if you stand there as an American, black, white, Asian, whatever, and everybody's standing there with AR-15s and they're all pointed at the ground, and you say, we're not going to take this anymore. I don't have to point my rifle at you to make the point, but you need to understand this bullshit is over.
I can agree with the permit thing because I like going into both angles, right? I see where you're coming from on this, Sam, because it does make sense. Changing the game is key, and if you can put something together where you have, 100 to 500 people, armed and doing such things, I think that's great. I'd love to find 500 people with AR-15s. I mean, you go to the SHOT Show, I'm sure you can find some people, but those aren't the type of people that are going to show up. It's really.
I think that kind of an would be an easy sell.
I think it would be too, but hang on.
It was a hard sell in Ferguson. I'll tell you that. The black people in Ferguson were so afraid of the police, they thought that if they marched with us, they would be shot dead. We only had 6 black people at the march.
Yeah, their personal experiences being from that area, dealing with those police, that's basically what might have likely happened.
Well, that's why we were marching. That was the whole point of it,
right?
Yeah, if you believe you can't exercise your rights because you'll be murdered, you don't have that right anyway. They've already taken it away from you through intimidation.
Right.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we may have to plan an event here soon.
I'm on board.
I'm sure we can all gather up enough people. It's just finding a location. Yeah, that is the difference, because being a structured anarchist, I don't believe in paying to ask. I don't believe in going to court and pleading. I don't agree with any of that. I'm not going to ask for forgiveness or tell you if I'm guilty or not guilty or plead no God. You're the one that brought me here. You're the one that has to prove it. But if we have to keep one foot in the system to make sure that we can begin to manipulate, then I'm okay with that, because we've used those tactics before. It's happened and it's worked quite well.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Let's have people in on the inside. Let's work the system to our advantage. Let's not just say we're not going to play. Let's play their game and beat them at it.
I agree with that. I think
let's win.
Spoke on that before. Yeah, we spoke on that before. They have perfected the tactics that we need to begin adopting and using for good. So if we can move forward with something like this, then I think we can definitely make a difference. But this is where it has to continue. And that's the problem with this, is the country that we're currently living in has weekend warriors. They have bandwagon protesters that are out there, and they don't even know why the hell they're out there, because it gives them something to do. They know shit's fucked up, but they don't have a solution. So they're going to go out there, they're going to stand, they're going to ask for forgiveness, they're going to potentially get arrested from time to time, and then they're all going to go back to work on Monday. And then they're going to meet back up on Saturday and stand against something different. There is nothing that stays in motion. You have to continue the fight. Stay in the fight. or it's never going to change.
Well, I tell you, the LaVoy situation in Oregon, it doesn't even matter what you agree with. It really did spark a movement in every state, pretty much. I mean, you saw a protest, groups getting together, and still to this day, they're still doing LaVoy rallies.
We got one on March 5th right here in St. Louis.
You know, not to flip gears, but one thing I did kind of want to bring up to you guys this evening, because it's a current event, and I think it really needs to be put out city with the Klan.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, that to me is a situation that I think we should discuss in order to get it out to the public to understand the differences. Justin posted something earlier today that I've been stewing on, and it's like, how do I put this shit out? And then all of a sudden he puts it out, and it's like, all right, on point. You know, there you go. It is what it is. Do I support the KKK? Hell no. But Jesus Christ, if your feelings got hurt by the words they said, then you might need to stand a little stronger in your position. Yeah. They didn't physically hurt you. They didn't trespass. They didn't assault you. They didn't, burn your house down. Nothing like that was going on. So if we're going to support freedom of speech, we have to support it.
Well, I think we need a meme that says even assholes have First Amendment rights.
Yeah. So I commented when Justin posted that. I was definitely like, what I loved about watching that video is because you got the KKK would go after black people it's historically accurate to say that the KKK was against black people. However, if you watch this video, you got white people, Mexicans, black people, everybody just whooping their ass. That's the best thing about that. Everybody was just beating them. You know what I mean? I don't, like you said, I don't agree with random acts of violence. Like I said, I don't agree with random acts of violence, just attacking people at random. You know what I mean? And like you say, I don't give a shit. Like people like burning flags and like doing everything like this and the other thing. It's the same. It falls under the same category. Do I agree with it? No, of course. Fuck the KKK. And I don't agree with corporate America. But But if somebody wants to do whatever they want to do, if they want to burn a flag, if they want to do this, whatever. Like, unless you're choking me with that flag, or unless you're like this dude, ended up doing like stabbing somebody with his flag pole, shit like that. You're right. The First Amendment rights is there, for that. But like I said, I just thought it was awesome that it was a variety of people from all different racial backgrounds standing up and that was awesome.
Now, John, I'm sure you've been a part of this, and I'm pretty sure Heather's been in it with us, and there's a good chance Sam's been involved, and I think everybody on the panel, actually. That was pretty stupid to say all those names. If I've been in the center of a Black Lives Matter march and have heard kill Whitey, kill cracker cops, all these different things. This is black space. Whites aren't allowed here, but you know what, bro? You're cool. You're all right, man. And I actually got a message from a friend who posts nothing but cracker crap. And Heather and I love her to death. She's an awesome chick. She's like, oh, these other motherfuckers, they ain't right. But you guys, you make sure you tell Heather I said hello, but fuck the crackers. That shit, and it's funny. I'll read you guys the message. She's awesome. I love her to death because she's just very extreme in her views, and she's passionate about it. And that's the direction she goes. But you know what? I have never once had my feelings hurt.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I've been surrounded by that. And
you wouldn't believe what they said to us when we went up to guard that black reporter from InfoWars and that white guy named Joe Biggs. When we walked down the streets of Ferguson and the cops got behind their cars because we're all carrying suppressed weapons, and we go to cross the street and the crowd is all on the other side of the street, and the stuff they yelled at us, it was unbelievable. And I called one of them over. I said, "Hey, come here." I said, "Are you talking to me?" and he said, "You're white motherfucker. You're the KKK. You're the fucking police." I said, "If I'm the police, how come when I came out on the street, all those police went and hid behind their cars from me?" Are you paying attention, son? I said, "I believe in your right to protest. Why are you mad at me?" And the look on the kid's face, it was priceless.
Yeah, as far as like the Black, like when Jeremy asked the question earlier, like when he says Black Lives Matter, what do you think? As far as like I see that as two different things. Like it's when somebody says Black Lives Matter is one thing, but then you have the Black Lives Matter movement. when somebody says Black Lives Matter, yeah, of course Black Lives Matter. My first thing that pops into my head is, yeah, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, white lives matter. I mean, you know what I mean? So that's as far as that goes. But when people say Black Lives Matter, people think of the Black Lives Matter movement. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't give a fuck who pisses off. That Black Lives Matter movement sold the fuck out. Straight up. Like, they sold out.
I look at it totally different than almost everybody else on the panel, I think. Because, you know, if I'm going to visit my mom and she's dying of breast cancer, and she describes to me the pain that she's going through, I'm not going to sit there and tell her how prostate cancer hurts just as much. You know, I'm just not going to do that in her home. So when a black person who is suffering emotional distress because they see someone that's similar to them being murdered by statist police assholes, okay, the last thing I'm going to say to that person is white lives matter. I'm going to sit with them and help them hold their pain and say, okay, what are we going to do now?
No, definitely. I'm not saying not to do that. I'm just saying, like, as far as, because I just want to, like, because most people when just because of the media and the push behind it, when people hear the term Black Lives Matter, they think more of the movement that's going on rather than somebody actually saying the term, saying that Black Lives Matter, like the actual just saying the words. You know what I mean? And
well, I can tell you this,
like there are even like protest. I mean, put it this way, I brought it up as on one of our conference calls that about you got there's been like a list been compiled from the start in Ferguson of protesters, whether they were individuals or groups that have been receiving, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars. They're basically paid protesters. You know what I mean? And there are all these. I mean, there's 3 pages. A list of names of individuals and groups that have been getting these thousands of dollars, and I've gone through that list of names and the groups and the people that have been getting this money, and I have yet to see any. Like, I mean, they even had this event. There was like the More group or the Move. I think it was More. You know, they got thousands of dollars, but yet, I wasn't in Ferguson from day one, from the time Mike Brown got shot up until towards the end. But at the same time, I was there for 2.5 months. And I didn't see one of them. I didn't see one of them people in the streets the entire time I was there. So you know what I mean. But when they're basically collecting this money and they're getting these checks, and they're like, all right, well, they'll from wherever they're getting their freaking information from or whatever. But they're like, all right, they would be like, oh, we're holding this event at this restaurant, and people would go there and they'd have these speeches and talk and blah blah. But when we would go to that meeting after being out in the streets all day. And then we'd be out in all the streets the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that, and we're like, all right, where are these people? You know what I mean? So they're getting paid for this shit. You know what I mean? And it's ridiculous. So
well, I can tell you this. I can tell you this about Black Lives Matter. When we called them about the armed protest,
they probably didn't want nothing to do with it.
Cowards.
Yep.
Couldn't even imagine standing up for their rights, with white people next to them. Couldn't hack it.
Well, yeah. That's the funky part, though. That's the funky part, because here in Cincinnati, our BLM here is completely different than Columbus and Ferguson and Chicago. I've been to their planning meetings here, and it was literally 60% white people standing in there. But it's different everywhere.
I see it as it's like same thing as like people running for office. Like they're running for office and they may have good intentions, but once they get in there and then somebody starts throwing checks in their face. Like I know somebody personally that people showed up at her door, knocked on the door, and they handed her a $2,700 check, and she's like, "What the hell is this?" And they were like, "Just take it, you need it." You know what I mean? Like $2,700. Like shit. And you want to know? Like we were down there for 2.5 months. We were down there with this girl, with these people. You know what I mean? Like why didn't they come to us with this money? You want to know why? Because they know that we would have told them to go fuck themselves. So I mean, everything starts out with good intentions. But what's up?
I think this goes like with the groups being able to work together too, because like Mike was saying, in Cincinnati it's a little different. In Columbus, there were emails sent out to groups that I've been involved with, like, you guys are not welcome to this protest. Like, you're white and you are not welcome. When really, do you want support? Because we are here to help you. And so to say we don't want your help because you're white, then to me that's you saying we have to keep pursuing this agenda. that, white people are against us, because what can we possibly say when now they're standing beside us, fighting for us, fighting with us? And it goes both ways, because I see it in the Patriot movement too. I've seen them mock Anonymous for showing up to their events. I've seen Anonymous mock Patriots for showing up to their events. So you're actually gaining support from people who you haven't been able to have that connection with previously, and when they finally get there, this is what you do. So, and Mike always says, are you here to grow a movement, or are you here actually for the cause you're working on? If it was really about, I'm just using it as an example, Tamir Rice's life, then you would want support from anywhere you could possibly get it. You would not be judging people by skin color or group or whatever the case may be. I mean, as a parent, I would want everybody on my side, unless I have a certain agenda that I'm trying to, show everyone. This is why it happened, and this is why, I'm a victim and I will remain a victim. But when you have support from everybody, it's kind of hard to say those things. So when people turn their backs...
Go ahead.
I was just saying, so when people turn their backs on getting help, I mean, that speaks volumes to me of what you're really wanting out of this.
I offered Tamir Rice's parents and their attorney to come and testify as an expert witness. Nothing. Don't want my help.
Yeah. Well, no matter what it is, no matter what the cause, no matter what the reason, no matter who's involved, I mean, me personally, if I see some bullshit, I'm calling it out. I don't care who it is, how it's involved, whoever, like, what, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like I said, if I see some activists, Anons, Patriots, Panthers, I don't care who it is. I don't care what your affiliation is or who you, like, whatever. If you're on some bullshit, you're getting called out on it. You know what I mean? So, and as far as like Sandra said, the people that are driven by hate, shit like that. I mean, you can work with some people so much. I mean, that's why we work with we work with with the original Black Panther Party, and we work with the Panther Party. As far as the new Black Panther Party, hell no, those dudes are right. You know what I mean? You can't work with. I mean,
well, and the thing about it too is we all have preached this unity for so long within all of our groups, and now that it was finally happening, now that people were being awake, we never thought we'd see the Patriots out like that. Never in a million years. But once they did, once they came forward, everyone started complaining. Like, oh, well, now you're here. Where were you? This, and, and they go over a million times. Yeah, they should have been there. Every single one of those events, they should have, but they weren't. But you've been hoping and waiting. The masses would awaken. Now they are, and you condemn them. So, I mean, I think that's extremely counterproductive.
Yep.
Well, that's I mean, people all tend to turn this into some kind of competition, It's not. Yeah. You do what you can when you can for as long as you can, and, somebody else will be there to pick up the slack. None of us are irreplaceable. We can all be, be replaced by somebody else. And we have to, a group that doesn't want to play ball, fine, go have fun. And just accept and use those resources that we can access.
And also just realize, like, for some of us, 5 years ago, I wasn't on a street. I wasn't stepping off a curb 5 years ago. And my first protest, if someone would have treated me that way and been like, well, where have you been? You haven't, like, learned the truth by now and, like, condemned me, I probably wouldn't come back. I wouldn't. So
we're dealing with that with the militias quite a bit right now, aren't we?
Yes. Yep.
People are shitting on them. That's been a lot. When was the last time you saw a police officer walk up to a protest and try and negotiate?
Actually, that happened in Ferguson with the friggin' when the MRAP was coming up the hill, and they came. Well, the dude was trying to tell me he wasn't a cop, but he was just like plain clothes, and he comes walking up the hill. And he's like, oh, we were like, yo, you were allowed to peaceful protest. Like, we weren't, like, at this time, we were like, yeah, we weren't out in the street. We were on the sidewalk across the street from Ferguson Police Department. And the dude come walking up, and behind him, he's got the MRAPs coming up the hill, lined with, like, SWAT, riot gear, the whole nine and everything. And they even announced over the loudspeaker that, like, they were loading non-lethal rounds and everything. This dude's like, comes walking up, and he's like, oh, what do you guys want, or whatever. I'm like, fuck you. I'm like, you're a fucking cop. Like, we ain't here to, like, negotiate. We're allowed to peacefully protest down at the street. And he's like, blah, blah, he's sitting trying to, like, oh, this, that, and the other thing, whatever. And then even when he did that, the dude walks back down. He's like, all right, well, they're going to turn the MRAP around. They're going to come up here and turn the MRAP around and then, go back down there, and you guys can peacefully protest across the street from the police station just as long as you stay out of the street. And we're like, fuck you. We're like, back that thing down the street. And, they backed it down the street, whatever. And we go back down there. The second we hit the sidewalk, the friggin' riot squad and National Guard came running across the street and started attacking people, straight arresting people, pepper spray, you name it.
So what you're doing is you're comparing what Ferguson was, which we haven't seen in this country since the 60s, if even then, that long of a street battle, to an occupation of a ranch. You know what I'm getting at? That is
and the
totally
difference too is it's very different when you have a bunch of cops and SWAT and federal agents show up to a riot and a protest, and the difference when you have a Fed show up at your door, at your house, alone, when you don't have the security of your group out in the street or whatever. That's, I think, a big difference.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of the Patriots end up having to do. These are personal interactions. This isn't like, because we went out and rioted, they all showed up to where we were.
No, we weren't rioting at the time. We weren't rioting at that time in Ferguson, and yes, I have had the FBI come to my house in Plymouth, Massachusetts.
They've got.
Well, I think the rule of thumb is if a federal agent comes to query you, the answer is I don't have an attorney present. I'm not talking to you.
Nope, I agree with that.
Exactly.
Goodbye.
Yep.
Here's the thing. What happened in Ferguson was a tragedy. There's over 5 different Supreme Court rulings that say the government and the police cannot convert the exercising of a right into a crime. Mm-hmm. And that's what we saw over and over again in Ferguson. I saw a little girl walk out in the middle of the street, this skinny little black girl, and she started screaming, "Fuck the police," and she held her hand over her head and she started shouting. The next thing you know, they're tasing her, they're spraying her with mace, they're beating her down, they're handcuffing her, and they're stuffing her in a vehicle. And I'm like, what crime did she commit? What the hell?
Yeah. Well,
hey, I'll be down in Ferguson twice for trials over that shit.
That brings up a really interesting point that I think a lesson that I learned from Ferguson is that we didn't have near enough video cameras from near enough angles to capture all of this crooked behavior by the police.
That's because Awakened Media wasn't there, man.
When we set up a protest from now on, we got to have cameras from 15 different angles. It ought to be like a fucking Super Bowl game. Well, let me tell you about the 3 GoPros that we had in Ferguson. We had guys walking with the protesters. Our group, our security personnel. We had guys with Guy Fawkes masks on. We had guys in with the crowd. At one point, we had 3 different guys in the crowd, almost 40 yards apart in a triangle. And on the same half second of the recording, they used like a Stingray device, and they literally scrambled all 3 GoPro cameras at the same freaking time. And it was 2 seconds before they waded into the crowd to beat people and arrest people.
Yeah.
Will you clarify something real quick? Sorry, John. When they put these Stingrays into effect, I thought it basically shut down all transmissions. Does that actually scramble your SD card as well?
Well, you have to understand there's several different paths to taking control of an electronic device. One is you deal with the power supply. The other, you deal with the intelligent control side of the device. We could tell, my Air Force JTAC, by looking at the video, could tell the type of, in this device, it's not actually a Stingray, it's actually a different device made by Harris Corporation, but it actually takes control of the intelligence side of the GoPro and puts a certain fuzz on the screen.
Is there any way some of the videos that I've had from Ferguson, it was like it was at one time we had left the protest. We were followed by 3 SUVs full of riot squad. The dude went to pull over into the park, pull over to park. I get out of the car to back him in. I turn around, I saw the 3 SUVs. I was like, fuck. And then freaking they just rolled right up to the car, and they freaking basically surrounded his car. I walk up the street, and I'm probably about 150, 200 feet away. I was filming and taking the video. Once you got within 50 feet to 100 feet of the SUVs, with the videos, you could hear it, but the video was like that scrambled. It was like a green screen, and there's squiggly lines all across the screen.
Like green.
You get the audio. Yeah, you could get the audio, but there was no visual whatsoever.
All right. Yep. So are there techs out there that can combat that in any way? Is there any way we can put some sort of protection on the camera?
No.
You can do it by if you have an old school camera. Like the way I figured it is that like if you have like a smartphone, they obviously can get into that, or if you have a camera that has any type of Wi-Fi, because a lot of the GoPro cameras have the Wi-Fi capability.
Yep.
So if you have like an old school camera, I'm pretty sure that they can't access that.
Got you.
If we could figure that, honestly, right now we know TFC radio is going to be fine because apparently we can get the audio. But what are we going to do with the video when they want to try and put something that into effect? So what you're saying is we're going to have to go and try to find some old camcorders?
No, well, here's the thing. If you get some old magnetic tape camcorders that have a little bit of zoom capability, then you get out of the hot zone and you film from different angles with a little bit of magnification. It's not going to give you the audio you want, but it'll give you the video you need.
That makes sense.
I've noticed too at protests when if you're using your cell phone to record, if you put your cell phone in airplane mode, then it doesn't affect your phone.
But I thought they also had the capabilities because we were dealing with this in Baltimore. They were running shit up there because our live stream uplinks wouldn't work. Cell phones weren't worth a shit. You barely got any signal, and batteries drained within an hour. So do they have the capability to just drain your device?
Yep.
Battery on it? Okay.
Oh yeah, They do that. They do that in DC numerous times.
And that's all. So that's not necessarily a pulse that's being put out as much as it is. It's a transmitter getting picked up by the Wi-Fi or Bluetooth receiver.
There's even a virus that you get sent to a phone or a device that does that.
Damn it, Tammy! I don't know anything about viruses.
You were so gentle when you said that.
That's not my area. I don't know anything about that. So they can actually put viruses on everybody's phones by clicking a button?
Well, what they do is they're pulling information off your phone, and it's activating your phone and causing it to drain the battery faster. When I was running the Ferguson ops, my battery that normally lasts 4 days would last about 3.5 hours.
Wow.
Good Lord. So how did it work with a BlackBerry?
Pardon me?
BlackBerries. We always use BlackBerries. They were the most secure phones you could use, even if they're pink.
I had an Android Note 4.
BlackBerry runs off their own enterprise.
Yes. So
they're the best
BlackBerry
phones. I think so, anyway.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
When it comes to security, yeah, exactly. BlackBerry.
So
Androids are the least secure.
Yes.
Correct. Right. So would the BlackBerry be any better in this type of situation?
I don't know about the camera.
We'll have to research them.
Yeah, I'm asking. I have no idea.
I think what would be better, rather than trying to figure out which kind of phone would be better, I think some of these, as far as like hackers and some of the more technically inclined people should be putting together a system that actually blocks their system.
Agreed.
Yeah, there's got to be a way. If
you
we all
can't
know that, you can't. Come on.
No, you don't understand how transmissions work.
No, I don't.
You can block something from reaching your device, but you can't block them from transmitting. It's a whole different deal.
So we need to basically go get one of those digital point and shoots that everybody came out with. Right after people got rid of the film, now you got just a regular camera there that you have to go plug into your computer to upload the photos. Because there is no Wi-Fi or Bluetooth link on it.
There's a thought.
Okay.
No low tech.
Right. Okay. I've got one of those.
We need about 10 of them.
I think my grandma has one.
They're cheap enough.
Time to hit the garage sales.
Hell yeah. Well,
you know, Harris Corporation's in Florida. That might be a great place to hold the next event.
They're the company that makes the tear gases in Pennsylvania.
They make Harris Corporation makes all this electronic warfare stuff. You guys just have no idea. And it's part of what the feds are using against their own people.
Right.
Just watch some YouTube videos from DEF CON. look up DEF CON on YouTube. You'll learn a lot about that kind of stuff and other security vulnerabilities and even how they hack into vehicles.
Well, hey, I just want to say thanks for keeping me up 6 hours past my bedtime. I got to go take my Geritol and hit the sleep.
You just heard from the Resistance. The Resistance, powered by Sleeper Cells.